The ballroom of the Plaza Hotel in New York City was vibrating. It was not just the sound of applause, though that was deafening. It was a physical sensation, a tremor of adoration that seemed to rise from the floorboards and travel up through the soles of Ethan Carter's hand-stitched Italian leather shoes. He stood at the center of the stage, the spotlight, blindingly white, hot against his skin. To anyone else, the heat might have been uncomfortable. To Ethan, it felt like a warm bath. It felt like home. He held the crystal trophy in his hands. It was heavy, angular, and cold. Architect of the Year. Finally, after 5 years of being nominated, and 5 years of polite, gracious losing smiles, tonight the smile was real. He looked out into the darkness beyond the stage lights. He couldn't see the faces of the 500 guests, but he knew they were looking at him. He knew they were envious. He leaned into the microphone. His voice was smooth, practiced, the baritone timbre that he had perfected over years of boardroom pitches. Architecture is not about building walls, Ethan said, pausing for effect. He knew exactly how long to wait. 1 second, 2 seconds. It is about curating space. It is about dictating how a human being experiences the world around them. Tonight, you honor me, but I honor the vision. I honor the relentless pursuit of perfection. The applause erupted again. He nodded, humble but regal. He thanked the Academy. He thanked his partners. He thanked the city of New York for being his canvas. He did not thank his wife. Sarah was sitting at table number 1, directly in the center of the front row. She was clapping. Her hands moved with a steady, rhythmic precision, but her eyes were dry. She was wearing a midnight blue dress that Ethan had selected for her. It was elegant, expensive, and slightly too tight around the ribs. She had told him this morning that it was uncomfortable, but he had dismissed it with a wave of his hand, saying that beauty required structure. So she sat there, breathing shallowly, serving as part of the structure of his life. 10 minutes earlier, before he walked onto the stage, Ethan had snapped at her. His tie was slightly crooked. He hadn't noticed, but Sarah had. She had reached out to fix it, her fingers cool and gentle against his neck. He had swatted her hand away, his nerves fraying. "Don't touch me," he had hissed, his voice low enough that the nearby donors couldn't hear. "You're making me nervous. Just sit there and try not to look so miserable. This is the biggest night of my life." She had pulled her hand back as if burned. She fixed the tie anyway, quickly, deftly, while he looked away to wave at a city councilman. She had made him perfect for the world, and he had punished her for it. Now, on stage, Ethan raised the trophy high. The flashbulbs went off like a lightning storm. In his mind, he was a god. He was the man who had redesigned the skyline. He was the man who had tamed steel and glass. He looked down at Sarah. For a split second, their eyes met. He expected to see adoration. He expected to see the reflection of his own glory in her eyes. Instead, he saw a strange, glassy emptiness. It was like looking into a window of an abandoned house. It annoyed him. Why couldn't she just be happy? Why did she always have to be so heavy? He broke eye contact and smiled at the camera. The after-party was a blur of champagne and handshakes. Ethan moved through the crowd like a shark in familiar waters. He knew exactly who to talk to, how long to laugh at a bad joke, and when to pivot to the next person. He was high on adrenaline. Ethan! Magnificent speech! It was Marcus, a real estate developer worth billions. Ethan gripped his hand. "Thank you, Marcus. We need to talk about that Midtown project. I have ideas. Call my secretary. We'll do lunch." Ethan turned, searching for a fresh drink. A waiter appeared instantly with a scotch. Neat. Exactly how he liked it. Ethan didn't even look at the waiter. He just took the glass. He didn't know that Sarah had signaled the waiter 2 minutes ago, spotting the empty glass in Ethan's hand from across the room. She was standing by a marble pillar, holding her own untouched glass of water. She watched him. He was charming. He was brilliant. He was laughing with a group of young female interns from a rival firm. They were hanging on his every word. Sarah saw the way he leaned in, the way he touched the arm of the blonde woman in the red dress when he made a point. It wasn't sexual, not overtly. It was the touch of a man who needed to be touched, who needed to be reassured of his own magnetism. Sarah felt a vibration in her clutch purse. She ignored it. She knew who it wasn't. It wasn't Ethan. Ethan was 20 feet away, but he felt miles distant. A young man approached her, He looked nervous, holding a notebook. Mrs. Carter? Sarah smiled. It was her public smile, soft, unassuming, safe. Yes? I'm a junior associate at the firm. I just wanted to say, I know everyone talks about Ethan's vision, but I remember the editing you did on the proposal for the Hudson Library. The way you restructured the lighting narrative, it was poetic. I heard you used to be an editor. Sarah's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned, a little sadder. That was a long time ago. I just help out with the grammar now. Ethan does the real work. Right, of course, the young man said, sensing he had stepped over a line. Well, congratulations. He walked away. Sarah took a sip of water. She hadn't just fixed the grammar on the Hudson proposal. She had rewritten the entire concept statement the night before the deadline because Ethan's original draft had been arrogant and cold. She had infused it with humanity. She had given the building a soul. Ethan had won the bid, and he had never mentioned her contribution again. She looked back at Ethan. He was checking his phone. A small, secret smile played on his lips. It was a smile Sarah hadn't seen directed at her in 5 years. On Ethan's screen, a message from Chloe popped up. Watching the live stream. You look like a king. Wish I could take that suit off you right now. Ethan typed back quickly. Soon. Paris is next week. Just you and me. He slid the phone back into his pocket and looked up to find Sarah standing beside him. He flinched, just slightly. Ready to go? Sarah asked. Her voice was level. I'm working the room, Sarah, Ethan snapped, keeping his voice low and smiling for the room. You can go to the car if you're tired. I can't just leave. These people are my future. The car has been waiting for 40 minutes, Ethan. The driver is tired. And you have the board meeting at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Ethan sighed, a dramatic exhale of a martyr. Fine, fine. You always know how to kill the mood. He turned back to the crowd, waved a charismatic goodbye, and guided Sarah out of the ballroom by her elbow. His grip was firm, possessive, and entirely devoid of affection. The limousine ride back to their penthouse on the Upper East Side was silent. The city rolled by outside the tinted windows. A stream of yellow taxis, neon signs, and steam rising from the subway grates. It was raining now. The drops streaked across the glass, distorting the lights. Ethan loosened his tie. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by the dull irritation he always felt when he was alone with his wife. She was so quiet. Her silence felt like an accusation. You could have looked a little more enthusiastic tonight, Ethan said, breaking the silence. He didn't look at her. He was scrolling through Twitter, reading comments about his win. Sarah looked out the window. I clapped, Ethan. I smiled. You smiled like you were at a funeral. People notice these things, Sarah. They think we're unhappy. Are we happy? Sarah asked. She turned to look at him. Ethan stopped scrolling. He let out a short, incredulous laugh. Are we happy? Sarah, look around you. You're sitting in a limousine. You're wearing a $5,000 dress. You live in a penthouse overlooking the park. I just won the most prestigious award in my field. What more do you want? I want you to look at me, Sarah said. Ethan turned his head. He looked at her, but he didn't see her. He saw a woman who was aging. He saw the fine lines around her eyes. He saw a woman who had become part of the furniture. I'm looking at you, he said flatly. You look tired. You should get more sleep. Maybe go to a spa tomorrow. I don't need a spa, Ethan. I need my husband. I am right here. Ethan's voice rose, filling the cabin. God, you are exhausting. I work 18 hours a day to give you this life, and all you do is complain. Do you have any idea the pressure I'm under? Do you have any idea what it takes to run a firm of 200 people? I know exactly what it takes, Sarah whispered. I know about the tax audit you're ignoring. I know about the HR complaint from the new assistant that you swept under the rug. I know you forgot to sign the insurance renewal for the office last week. So I forged your signature and sent it in so you wouldn't lose your coverage. Ethan froze. His face reddened. You went into my office? I organized your office, Ethan, like I do every week. Because if I didn't, you would drown. Ethan glared at her. His ego, fragile and inflated, could not handle the truth. He couldn't admit that he needed her, so he attacked. Stay out of my business, Sarah. You're a housewife. Stick to buying flowers and planning dinner parties. Leave the real world to me. He turned back to the window, ending the conversation. Sarah didn't say another word. She simply closed her eyes and leaned her head against the cool glass. She wasn't crying. She was calculating. She was measuring the distance between them and realizing it was no longer a gap. It was a canyon. The penthouse was a masterpiece of modern minimalism. Floor-to-ceiling glass, polished concrete floors, sharp angles, and stark white walls. It was cold. It was sterile. It was exactly what Ethan wanted. They entered the apartment in silence. Ethan threw his keys on the console table, a slab of raw marble that cost more than most cars. He walked straight to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and drank it standing over the sink. Sarah walked around the apartment, turning off the lights that the cleaning staff had left on. She straightened the cushions on the sofa. She picked up Ethan's keys and placed them in the designated bowl, because he would panic in the morning if they weren't exactly there. She picked up his jacket, which he had dropped on the floor, and hung it in the closet. She was a ghost in her own home. Ethan went into the master bedroom. He stripped off his clothes and left them in a pile on the floor. He didn't brush his teeth. He collapsed onto the bed, burying his face in the Egyptian cotton pillows. When Sarah entered the room 10 minutes later, having locked the doors and set the alarm, Ethan was already snoring. She looked at him. He looked younger when he slept. The arrogance fell away, leaving just the face of the man she had met 20 years ago in a coffee shop near the university. That man had been passionate, messy, and kind. He had dreamed of building schools for poor communities. He had dreamed of changing the world. Now, he built luxury condos for billionaires and forgot his wife's birthday. Sarah went to the bathroom. She removed her makeup slowly. She looked at herself in the mirror. She touched the skin of her cheek. She was 40 years old. She was still beautiful, in a quiet, dignified way. But her eyes looked tired. Not sleepy tired, soul tired. She opened the medicine cabinet. Inside, lined up with military precision, were Ethan's vitamins and supplements. He took 6 different pills every morning. He believed they kept him young. He never remembered to buy them. Sarah ordered them. Sarah sorted them into his daily dispenser. She reached for the dispenser. It was empty for tomorrow. She began to fill it. Vitamin C, fish oil, magnesium, zinc. She paused. She held the zinc pill in her hand. If I wasn't here, she thought, would he even know what these are? Would he know that he can't take the magnesium on an empty stomach or he gets cramps? She dropped the pill into the slot. Clink. She finished filling the dispenser and placed it on his nightstand, next to a glass of water she had brought from the kitchen. She placed his phone on the charger. She checked his alarm. It was set for 6 a.m. She walked to the other side of the huge king-sized bed and slid under the covers. The space between them was vast. Ethan didn't move. He didn't reach for her in his sleep. He dreamed of towers of glass, reaching into the clouds. Sarah lay awake, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the wind howling outside the skyscraper. The next morning was a ballet of dysfunction. The alarm went off at 6 a.m. sharp. Ethan groaned and slept it off. He sat up, rubbing his face. His head throbbed slightly from the scotch. He reached out blindly. His hand found the glass of water. He drank. He found the pill dispenser. He opened the Tuesday slot and swallowed the pills. He didn't look at them. He didn't think about how they got there. They were just there, like oxygen. He got out of bed and walked to the closet. His gray suit was hanging on the front hook, steam-pressed. His blue shirt was next to it, crisp and buttoned. His shoes were polished, sitting at the base. He dressed quickly. He felt good, powerful. The hangover was fading. He walked out to the kitchen. The smell of coffee filled the air. It was a specific blend, Ethiopian Yirgacheffe, light roast. Ethan hated bitter coffee. Sarah bought the beans from a specialty roaster in Brooklyn and ground them fresh every morning. She was standing by the island, reading a book. A plate of scrambled eggs with smoked salmon and chives was waiting for him. The toast was cut into triangles, just the way he liked. Morning, Ethan grunted. He sat down and began to eat while scrolling on his iPad. Good morning, Sarah said. She didn't look up from her book. What's on the schedule? Ethan asked. Mouthful of eggs. Sarah closed the book. It was a novel about a woman who travels to Italy to find herself. She knew Ethan wouldn't ask about it. You have the board meeting at 8, Sarah recited from memory. Then a site visit at the Brooklyn Navy Yard at 10. Lunch with the zoning commissioner at 12:30. Remember, he likes to talk about his sailboat. So ask him about the regatta. At 3, you have the interview with Architectural Digest. And at 7, we have dinner with the Hendersons. Ethan stopped chewing. The Hendersons? Tonight? Yes, it's their anniversary. We promised. I can't do tonight, Ethan said, waving his fork. I have to meet a potential client, late dinner, tell them I'm sick, or that there was a crisis at the site. Sarah looked at him. She knew there was no client. She knew he was meeting Chloe. She had seen the notification on his phone last night before he cleared it. Can't wait for tonight. Ethan, the Hendersons are your oldest friends. Bob helped you get your first loan. Bob is a bore, and his wife has a shrill voice. I'm not going. Cancel it. You're good at making excuses. Make one up. He stood up, wiping his mouth with a napkin and dropping it on the half-eaten plate. He grabbed his briefcase. By the way, he said, turning back at the door, the coffee was a little sour today. Check the grinder settings. He didn't wait for an answer. The elevator doors slid open, and he stepped inside. The doors closed, sealing him off from his life, from his wife, from the mess he left behind. Sarah sat alone in the kitchen. She looked at the coffee cup. She took a sip. It was perfect. It wasn't sour. His soul was sour. She stood up. She carried his plate to the sink. She washed it. She dried it. She put it away. Then she walked to the window and looked out at the city. The rain had stopped, but the sky was a bruised gray. Cancel the Hendersons, she whispered to the empty room. She walked to the desk in the corner of the living room. It was a small desk, cluttered with papers. This was her office. Ethan had a library. She had a corner. She sat down and opened a folder. Inside was a business plan. The Paper Garden. That was the name. A bookstore and art gallery. A place for community. A place for quiet conversation. She had been working on the plan for 3 years. She had found a location in Savannah, a crumbling old building that needed love. She had crunched the numbers. It was viable. She wanted to show it to Ethan. She had tried last night, but the mood wasn't right. Maybe tonight. If he came home. Ethan's office was a shrine to his ego. Located on the 40th floor of a midtown tower, it offered a panoramic view of Manhattan. The walls were lined with awards and framed magazine covers featuring his face. He marched in at 7:50 a.m. His assistant, Jessica, a 22-year-old, with terrified eyes, jumped up. Good morning, Mr. Carter. Congratulations on the award. Coffee, Jessica. And get the legal team on the line. I want to sue that contractor for the delays on the West Side project. Yes, sir. Your wife called... Ethan stopped. What does she want? She said to remind you to sign the checks for the charity auction. They need to go out by noon. Ethan rolled his eyes. She manages my life like I'm a child. Put them on my desk. I'll sign them later. He went into his office and slammed the door. He didn't sign the checks. He sat in his leather chair and swiveled to look at the view. He felt invincible. The city looked like a circuit board, and he was the current running through it. He pulled out his phone and dialed Chloe. Hello, lover. Her voice purred. It was light, breathy, devoid of responsibility. I missed you last night, Ethan said, his voice dropping an octave. The gala was suffocating. Just a bunch of old people patting each other on the back. You looked hot on TV. I liked the suit. Did you wear it for me? I wear everything for you, he lied. Listen, about tonight. I'm getting out of a dinner thing. Let's go to that new French place in Soho. The one with the private booths. Ooh, fancy. I love it. Can we go dancing after? I want to show you off. Whatever you want. He hung up. He felt a rush of excitement. This was life, passion, adrenaline, not the stale, quiet routine of the penthouse. Not the sad eyes of Sarah watching him from across the table. Chloe made him feel young. Sarah made him feel known. And he hated being known. He hated that Sarah knew about his fear of failure, his allergies, his insecurities. He wanted to be worshipped, not understood. The day passed in a blur of meetings. Ethan was brilliant. He tore apart a junior architect's design for a lobby, humiliating the boy in front of the entire team, but then sketched a solution on a napkin that was objectively better. He was a tyrant, but he was a talented tyrant. At 3:00 p.m., the reporter from Architectural Digest arrived. She was a sharp woman with glasses. Mr. Carter, she said, recording the interview. Your work has a distinct duality, cold exteriors, but surprisingly warm, human-centric interiors. The flow of your residential projects, it feels very nurturing. Where does that come from? Ethan leaned back, steepled his fingers. It comes from deep within. I believe that an architect must be both a father and a mother to the space. I intuit the needs of the people who will live there. I sense their desire for comfort. He was lying. The warm flow, the nurturing aspects of his designs, Those were all Sarah's suggestions. She would look at his blueprints late at night and leave sticky notes. Too rigid here. A family needs a line of sight from the kitchen to the play area. Or, this hallway is too dark. Add a skylight or they'll feel trapped. He incorporated her notes and took the credit. He had done it for so long, he actually believed the ideas were his. Fascinating, the reporter said. And your wife? Does she influence your work? Ethan laughed. A dismissive, charming chuckle. Sarah? Oh no, Sarah is wonderful, but she's domestic. She keeps the home fires burning so I can go out and conquer the world. She doesn't understand the complexities of structural engineering. The reporter nodded, writing it down. Behind every great man... Exactly, Ethan said. Someone has to fold the laundry. Ethan didn't come home for dinner. He texted Sarah at 6:30 p.m. Crisis with the zoning board. Gonna be a late night. Don't wait up. Sarah read the text. She was standing in the kitchen holding a fresh sea bass she had bought at the market. She had planned to make his favorite dish, pan-seared bass with lemon caper sauce. She looked at the phone. She looked at the fish. She didn't cry. The tears had dried up years ago. Instead, she felt a cold, hard knot tightening in her stomach. It was the knot of realization. She wrapped the fish and put it in the fridge. She went to the living room and poured herself a glass of wine. She sat in the dark, looking at the city lights. Ethan came home at 2 a.m. He smelled of expensive perfume, a scent that was floral and cloying, nothing like Sarah's subtle lavender soap. He was tipsy. He stumbled into the bedroom. Sarah was awake, reading in bed, with a small lamp on. You're up, Ethan said, loosening his tie. I'm up. I told you not to wait. I wasn't waiting for you. I was reading. Ethan chuckled. He sat on the edge of the bed to take off his shoes. He struggled with the laces. He was drunker than he looked. Damn not, he muttered. Sarah watched him struggle. She put down her book. Ethan? What? I want to show you something. Not now, Sarah. I'm exhausted. I just saved a $20 million deal. It will only take a minute. She reached for the folder on her nightstand. The business plan, the paper garden. She held it out to him. I've been working on this. It's a business plan. For a bookstore in Savannah. I want to do it. I have the capital from my grandmother's inheritance. I just want you to look at the numbers. Tell me what you think. Ethan looked at the folder. He didn't take it. He looked at her with glazed, heavy eyes. A bookstore? He said. His voice was thick with mockery. Sarah, nobody reads books anymore. Print is dead. And Savannah, why the hell would you want to go to Georgia? Because it's beautiful. Because I want to build something of my own. Ethan laughed. It was a cruel sound. Build something? You? Sarah, you can't even manage the cleaning lady without my input. You're not a business owner. You're a support system. You're good at the soft stuff. Don't embarrass yourself. He stood up, swaying slightly. He reached for the glass of water on the nightstand, but his coordination was off. His hand struck the folder Sarah was holding. The folder flew open. Papers scattered across the floor. The glass of water tipped over, splashing cold liquid all over the meticulously typed pages of her business plan. Oops, Ethan said. He didn't apologize. He didn't bend down to help. Sarah stared at the wet papers. The ink was running. Her dreams were dissolving into blurry blue stains on the expensive carpet. Look at this mess, Ethan sighed. You're so clumsy with your things. Clean it up, will you? I need to sleep. He crawled into bed, pulled the duvet over his head, and turned his back to her. Sarah sat there. She didn't move to clean it up. She looked at the back of his head. She listened to his breathing, even out as he fell into a drunken sleep. She looked down at the ruined plan. If I wasn't here, she said softly, her voice barely a whisper in the dark room, you wouldn't be able to tie your own shoes. Ethan didn't answer. He was already gone, lost in his own world, where he was the king and she was nothing. Sarah stood up. She didn't pick up the papers. She walked out of the bedroom. She walked into the living room. She stood there for a long time, looking at the front door. Then she turned and walked to the closet. She pulled down a suitcase. It wasn't a sudden decision. It was the snapping of the final thread. The seed had been planted years ago, watered by neglect, fertilized by disrespect. And tonight, the plant had bloomed. It was a black, poisonous flower. She didn't pack everything, just the essentials. Some clothes, her passport, her grandmother's jewelry, the laptop with her writing on it. She moved quietly. The apartment was silent, save for the hum of the city. She wrote no note. What was there to say? Words had never worked with Ethan. Only actions would register. She walked back into the bedroom one last time. She looked at him. He was sprawled out, taking up most of the bed. He looked vulnerable, but she knew it was a lie. He was a fortress with no gate. She took off her wedding ring, a simple platinum band. She placed it on the nightstand, right next to the puddle of water and the soggy business plan. She placed her house keys next to the ring. She looked at the pill dispenser. Tomorrow was Wednesday. It was empty. She didn't fill it. She turned off the lamp. "Goodbye, Ethan," she whispered. She walked out of the room, down the hall, and out the front door. The latch clicked shut, with a sound that was final, absolute, and terrifyingly quiet. Ethan slept on. He didn't know it, but his life had just ended. The silence had begun. The sun rose over Manhattan with a blinding, indifferent brilliance. It sliced through the gap in the curtains that Sarah usually closed tight to keep the room dark for Ethan. Today, the gap was there. A blade of light hit Ethan directly across the eyes. He groaned and rolled over, burying his face in the pillow. His head felt heavy, a dull throb pulsing behind his temples. The aftertaste of expensive scotch and cheap pride coated his tongue. He reached out his hand, a reflex honed by 15 years of marriage. He reached for the glass of water. His hand hit empty air. Then, it hit the cold, damp wood of the nightstand. Ethan frowned, keeping his eyes closed. He petted the surface. No glass, no coaster, just a sticky residue. He opened one eye. The nightstand was empty. The pill dispenser was gone. "Sarah," he croaked. His voice was rough, unused. Silence. He waited. Usually, the sound of his voice, even a grumble, would summon her. She would appear with fresh water, an aspirin, and a soft, sympathetic smile. Nothing happened. The room was perfectly still. The only sound was the hum of the HVAC system. "Sarah," he called out, louder this time, tinged with irritation. Still nothing. Ethan sat up. The movement made his head spin. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and planted his feet on the carpet. Squelch. A cold, wet sensation seeped into his socks. He looked down. He was stepping directly into the puddle he had created the night before. The water from the overturned glass had soaked into the Persian rug. Scattered around his feet were the ruined pages of Sarah's business plan. The ink had bled into blue Rorschach tests, indecipherable and messy. "Damn it," Ethan muttered. He kicked the soggy papers aside. "Sarah, the carpet is ruined." He stood up, ignoring the mess. He marched to the bathroom. The door was open. The lights were off. "Sarah?" He checked the shower. Dry. He checked the walk-in closet. Her side was dark. He looked at the clock on the wall. 7:15 a.m. Panic didn't set in. Not yet. Annoyance did. She's out, he thought. Probably at the market. Or the gym. She picked a hell of a morning to change her routine. He turned to the mirror. He looked terrible. Puffy eyes. Stubble. He needed his vitamins. He opened the medicine cabinet. The bottles were there, lined up on the top shelf. But the daily dispenser, the little plastic organizer that Sarah filled every night, was empty. It sat on the counter, lid open, mocking him. "Unbelievable," Ethan whispered. She forgot. He grabbed the bottle of vitamin C. He struggled with the child-proof cap. His fingers were clumsy. The cap wouldn't turn. He gripped it harder, his knuckles turning white. Finally, it popped open with a jerk, sending orange tablets scattering across the marble floor. For God's sake! He left them there. He didn't have time for this. He needed coffee. He walked out to the kitchen, expecting the smell of Ethiopian roast. The kitchen was cold. The counters were pristine. The coffee machine was dark. Ethan stood in the center of the kitchen, hands on his hips. This was a strike. That's what this was. She was punishing him for last night. Passive-aggressive nonsense. She knew he couldn't function without his morning routine, so she had withdrawn it. It was petty. It was childish. He went to the machine. It was a complex Italian espresso maker, a chrome beast with levers and dials. Ethan had bought it because it looked like a sculpture. He had never actually used it. Sarah was the barista. He pressed a button. Nothing. He pressed another. A red light blinked. Check water level. He looked around for a pitcher. He couldn't find one. He grabbed a glass, filled it from the tap, and dumped it into the back of the machine. He spilled half of it on the counter. He pressed the button again. The machine whirred, groaned, and spat out a stream of brown sludge that smelled like burnt rubber. Ethan stared at the cup. He took a sip. He spat it out into the sink. "Fine," he said to the empty room. Point taken, Sarah. You're mad. Message received. He checked his phone. No texts. No missed calls. He typed a message. Very funny. Where are you? The coffee machine is broken and I can't find my gray tie. He hit send. The bubble turned blue. Delivered. He waited. No three dots. No read receipt. He threw the phone onto the island. He went back to the bedroom to dress. He opened his closet. Usually, Sarah laid out his suit. Today, the valet stand was empty. He dug through his rack. He found the gray suit. It was wrinkled. He must have worn it last week and forgotten to put it in the dry cleaning pile. Sarah usually checked the pile. He grabbed a blue suit instead. He couldn't find the matching trousers. He spent 10 minutes throwing clothes onto the floor until he found them bunched up in the back. By the time he left the apartment, it was 8:15 a.m. He was late. He was hungry. He was uncaffeinated. And he was furious. The office was a refuge. Here, at least, people were paid to listen to him. Jessica! He barked as he stormed past the reception desk. Coffee? Starbucks? Large? Black? Now. Jessica scrambled. Yes, Mr. Carter, right away. Ethan slammed his office door. He sat down and exhaled. He spun his chair to look at the view. The city was moving, efficient, relentless, just like him. He didn't need Sarah to start his day. He had managed. He was here. He pulled up his email. He had 50 unread messages. He started replying, typing furiously. At 10 o'clock a.m., his phone buzzed. He grabbed it, expecting an apology from Sarah. It was Chloe. Packed my bags. Bought a new beret for Paris. Are we still on for the 5 p.m. flight? Ethan stared at the screen. Paris. He had almost forgotten in the chaos of the morning. He felt a surge of vindication. Sarah was playing games? Fine. He would play a bigger game. He would go to the most romantic city in the world with a woman who actually appreciated him. A woman who didn't nag him about salt intake or business plans for bookstores. He texted back. Absolutely. Meet me at the lounge. First class. He didn't text Sarah again. He decided to let her stew. When he didn't come home tonight, she would worry. When he didn't come home tomorrow, she would panic. By the time he returned on Sunday, she would be so relieved to see him that she would forget all about this silent treatment. He called Jessica in. Clear my schedule for the rest of the week. Tell the partners I have a family emergency. A sick aunt in Ohio. Jessica nodded, writing it down. Is everything okay, Mr. Carter? It's fine. Just life. Oh, and book a car to JFK for 3 p.m. Yes, sir. Ethan leaned back. He felt in control again. He was the architect. He designed the buildings, and he designed the narrative. The flight to Paris was luxurious. Champagne before takeoff. Warm nuts. Reclining seats that turned into beds. Ethan sat by the window. Chloe sat beside him. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and a cashmere tracksuit that cost more than most people's cars. She looked the part, the trophy. This is amazing, babe, she said, clinking her glass against his. I've never flown first class before. Get used to it, Ethan said, smiling. You're with me now. He felt a pang of guilt, sharp and sudden. He pushed it down. Sarah had flown first class with him many times. She never took photos of the champagne. She usually spent the flight reading or reviewing his notes. She was a companion, not a tourist. Chloe took a selfie. She spent 20 minutes editing it. She showed it to Ethan. Look, the lighting makes my skin look amazing. Should I caption it escape or adventure? Whatever you want, Ethan said. He opened his laptop. He wanted to work. Put that away, Chloe whined, pouting. She reached over and closed his laptop. Talk to me. Tell me how amazing I look. Ethan looked at her. She was beautiful. Flawless skin, bright eyes, full lips. But there was nothing behind the eyes. No history, no understanding. You look beautiful, he said. It was a script. I know, she giggled. So, what are we going to do? Shopping? I want to go to Chanel and Dior, and there's this club. I thought we might visit the Louvre, Ethan said. There's a new exhibit on urban planning in the 19th century, and I want to see the Fondation Louis Vuitton. The architecture is boring, Chloe sang. Museums are for old people. Let's just eat, drink, and shop. Ethan forced a smile. Sure, shopping. He turned to the window. The plane was taxiing. He checked his phone one last time. Still no message from Sarah. He decided to leave a voicemail, just to cover his bases. He dialed home. It rang 4 times. Then the machine picked up. It was Sarah's voice on the recording. You've reached the Carters. We aren't available right now. Please leave a message. Her voice sounded calm, warm. Sarah, Ethan said after the beep. His voice was clipped. I'm heading out of town for a few days. Business trip. Since you decided to disappear this morning without a word, I assume you need some space. Fine, take your space. I'll be back on Sunday. I expect the house to be in order when I get back. And for God's sake, fix the coffee machine. He hung up. He turned off his phone. The plane roared down the runway and lifted into the sky. Ethan Carter was leaving his life behind, convinced he could return to it whenever he chose. Paris was gray and drizzly. It was the kind of weather Sarah loved. She would have wanted to walk along the Seine under an umbrella, stopping at the bouquiniste to look at old books. Chloe hated the rain. My hair's going to frizz, she complained as they exited the airport. Why didn't you order a limo? This taxi smells like cigarettes. It's Paris, Chloe. Everything smells like cigarettes, Ethan said. He was already tired. The jet lag was hitting him. They checked into the hotel, a 5-star palace near the Place Vendôme. The suite was opulent. Gold leaf, velvet, crystal chandeliers. Chloe jumped on the bed. Oh my God, look at the view! She ran to the balcony. Ethan stayed inside. He unpacked his bag. He realized he had packed 2 left shoes for his running gear. He threw them into the corner. Come look, Chloe squealed. Ethan went to the balcony. He looked at the Eiffel Tower in the distance. It was a marvel of engineering, a triumph of iron. Let's order room service, Chloe said. I'm starving. I want fries and a burger. We're in Paris, Chloe. We should go out. Have duck confit, coq au vin. Ew, I don't eat weird meat. Just order a burger. They ordered burgers. They ate in the room. Chloe watched a reality show on her iPad while she ate. Ethan sat in the armchair, looking at his phone. He turned it on. No messages. It had been 24 hours. She's really committing to the bit, he thought. Stubborn woman. He opened his email. There was a message from the building manager of their penthouse. Subject: package delivery. Mr. Carter, the doorman tried to deliver a package to your unit today, but nobody answered. We have held it at the desk. Please advise. Ethan frowned. Sarah was always home for deliveries. Unless she was really gone. Maybe she went to her sister's in Boston? No, they hated each other. Maybe a hotel? He felt a flicker of unease. Not worry, unease. Like he had forgotten to lock a door. What's wrong? Chloe asked, licking ketchup off her thumb. Nothing, Ethan said. Just work. The next 3 days were a test of endurance. Ethan tried to enjoy himself. He bought Chloe a bag at Chanel. She shrieked and kissed him, making a scene in the store. He felt a flash of pride when other men looked at him, the older man with the young, hot girl. But the pride faded as soon as she opened her mouth. This bag is so heavy, she complained 5 minutes later. Carry it for me. Ethan carried the Chanel bag. He looked ridiculous. On Friday night, they went to a Michelin-starred restaurant. The menu was in French. Sarah spoke fluent French. She had lived in Lyon for a year before they met. She always ordered for him, navigating the wine list with grace. Chloe stared at the menu. I can't read this. Do they have pasta? It's a tasting menu, Chloe. You eat what the chef prepares. But what if I don't like it? Just try it. The waiter arrived. He was stiff, formal. Ethan tried to order in broken French. The waiter corrected his pronunciation condescendingly. Ethan flushed. Sarah would have charmed the waiter. She would have made a joke in French, and the waiter would have treated them like royalty. Without Sarah, Ethan was just a rich American tourist with a trophy girlfriend. He was a cliché. He drank too much wine. He looked at Chloe across the table. She was texting. Who are you talking to? He snapped. Just my friends. I'm showing them the food. Relax. Put the phone away. We are having dinner. Chloe rolled her eyes. You're no fun when you're drunk. You act like my dad. The comment hit him like a slap. Dad. He was 16 years older than her. He had never felt the age gap before. Sarah was his contemporary. His partner. They had grown up together. With Chloe, he was just a wallet and a chaperone. He pushed his plate away. I'm not hungry. Sunday arrived. The flight home was quiet. Chloe was hungover and slept the whole way. Ethan stared out the window at the Atlantic Ocean. He was ready to go home. He was ready to end this charade. He would apologize to Sarah, maybe buy her a bracelet. He would tell her he was stressed. He would blame the work. She would forgive him. She always forgave him. He rehearsed the speech in his head. Sarah, I was a jerk. I'm sorry. Let's start over. I'll look at your business plan. Maybe we can find a space in New York instead of Savannah. Yes, that was the compromise. He would let her have her little hobby, as long as she stayed in New York. The plane landed. They took a car into the city. He dropped Chloe off at her apartment in the village. Call me later, she said. pecking him on the cheek. She didn't look back. She just grabbed her bags and ran inside. Ethan felt a wave of relief as the car pulled away. He was free of her. Home, he told the driver. The elevator ride up to the penthouse felt long. Ethan checked his watch. 6:00 p.m. 6:00 p.m. Sarah would be making Sunday dinner. Roast chicken, or maybe pot roast. The smell would hit him as soon as he opened the door. He adjusted his tie. He wanted to look presentable. He wanted to look like the returning hero. The elevator doors opened. He stepped into his private foyer. He unlocked the front door. "Honey, I'm home," he called out, injecting a cheerful tone into his voice. Silence. No smell of roast chicken, no sound of jazz playing on the speakers. The air in the apartment was stale. It smelled of nothing. Dust, closed windows. Ethan walked in. He dropped his bag. "Sarah?" He walked into the kitchen. It was exactly as he had left it on Tuesday morning. The burnt coffee cup was still in the sink. The vitamin C pills he had spilled were still scattered on the floor. A knot tightened in his chest. She hasn't been here. He walked to the living room. The curtains were still open. The sun had bleached a strip of the carpet. On the dining table, a vase of hydrangeas, Sarah's favorite flowers, sat in a pool of stagnant water. The blooms were brown, drooping, dead. Sarah never let flowers die. She changed the water every day. "Sarah!" Ethan yelled. There was panic in his voice now. He ran to the bedroom. The bed was unmade, just as he had left it. The sheets were cold. He looked at the nightstand. The puddle of water had dried, leaving a warped, stained ring on the wood. The soggy papers of the business plan were still there, stiff and crinkled like old parchment. And there, sitting in the center of the destruction, was the ring. The platinum band caught the last light of the setting sun. It sparkled, cold and indifferent. Ethan froze. He stared at the ring. It wasn't just a ring. It was a statement. It was a resignation letter. Next to the ring were her keys. The leather keychain he had given her for Christmas 5 years ago. He walked over slowly. His legs felt heavy, like he was wading through water. He picked up the ring. It was small, light. He looked at the closet. He threw the doors open. Her side was empty. Not completely empty. The evening gowns were there, the ones he made her wear to galas. The high heels she hated were there. But her comfortable clothes, her cardigans, her jeans, her walking shoes, gone. He ran to the bathroom. He opened the cabinet. Her toothbrush was gone. Her face cream was gone. He ran back to the bedroom. He looked for the suitcase. The large Samsonite was there. The carry-on was missing. He stood in the middle of the room, clutching the ring in his fist. The silence of the apartment was deafening. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. It was the silence of a tomb. He looked at the pill dispenser. Still empty. He looked at the phone charger. Empty. She hadn't gone to her sister's. She hadn't gone to a hotel for a few days. She had erased herself. "No," Ethan whispered. "No, you can't." He grabbed his phone. He dialed her number. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." He lowered the phone. His hand was shaking. No longer in service. She had disconnected the line. He rushed to the desk in the living room. Her little corner. He pulled open the drawers. Empty. No papers. No notebooks. No pens. She had taken everything that made her Sarah. She had left behind everything that made her Mrs. Ethan Carter. Ethan sank onto the sofa. The leather was cold. He looked around his multi-million-dollar penthouse. Without her, it was just a collection of expensive objects. It was a museum of his ego, and he was the only exhibit. He looked at the dead flowers again. "Sarah," he said. But this time, it wasn't a command. It was a plea. The sun dipped below the horizon. The apartment plunged into darkness. Ethan didn't turn on the lights. He sat there, in the dark, holding the ring, as the realization finally, truly, began to sink in. She wasn't coming back to clean up the mess. The mess was his now. The apartment was a canyon of shadows. Ethan sat on the Italian leather sofa for what felt like hours. But the digital clock on the VCR, which was flashing 12:01 because he didn't know how to set it, told him no time at all. His stomach growled, a low, primal rumble that echoed in the quiet room. He hadn't eaten since the burger in Paris, and that was hours ago. "Ridiculous," he muttered. He stood up, his joints popping. He walked to the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator. It was a stainless steel cavern. Inside, there was a jar of artisanal mustard, a bottle of white wine, the wrapped sea bass from Tuesday, which now smelled faintly of decay, and a carton of milk. There were no pre-made salads, No Tupperware containers labeled with days of the week. No marinating chicken breasts. He slammed the door shut. Fine, delivery. He pulled out his phone. He opened the food delivery app. He tapped on his favorite Thai place. Order history. He saw the usual order. Pad Thai, no peanuts, allergy, spring rolls, green curry. He pressed reorder. A pop-up appeared. Please verify CVV for card ending in 4589. Ethan stared at the screen. The card ending in 4589 was the household card. Sarah carried it. He didn't know the CVV. He didn't even know where the physical card was. He tried his own card. He had to enter the numbers manually. He fumbled with his wallet, pulling out his sleek black Amex. He typed in the numbers. Error. Billing zip code does not match. He cursed. He tried again. Error. He threw the phone onto the counter. He was a millionaire. He was an award-winning architect. And he couldn't order a box of noodles because he was too angry to type correctly. He opened the cupboard. He found a box of granola. It was the healthy kind Sarah ate. Cardboard flakes with dried berries. He poured it into a bowl. He poured the milk. He took a bite. The milk was sour. He spat it into the sink, gagging. He looked at the expiration date on the carton. It had expired 3 days ago. Sarah usually bought fresh milk every Tuesday and Friday. You did this on purpose, he hissed at the empty room. You planned this. He rinsed his mouth with tap water. He went to bed hungry. Monday morning hit him like a physical blow. He woke up at 7:30 a.m. He had forgotten to set his own alarm. Sarah was his alarm. She would open the curtains, touch his shoulder, and whisper, "It's time, Ethan." Without her, he had overslept. He scrambled out of bed. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in his chest. He had a 9 a.m. meeting with the city planning committee. He couldn't be late. He ran to the shower. The water was lukewarm. He turned the handle all the way to the left. Still lukewarm. He realized, with a jolt of fury, that the boiler needed to be reset manually after a power surge or a long period of disuse. Sarah knew how to do it. He didn't. He showered in the cold water, shivering, cursing her name with every drop. He ran to the closet. He grabbed a suit. He grabbed a shirt. He buttoned it up, his fingers clumsy. He looked in the mirror. The shirt was wrinkled. A spider web of creases radiated from the collar. He had never ironed a shirt in his life. He didn't even know where the iron was. It's fine, he told his reflection. I'll keep the jacket on. He couldn't find his watch. His vintage Patek Philippe. He always left it on the dresser, and Sarah always put it in the velvet box. The box was empty. He tore the drawers open. Socks, underwear, handkerchiefs. No watch. Did she steal it? No. Sarah wasn't a thief. She was precise. He found the watch under the bed, covered in dust bunnies. He must have knocked it off days ago. He wiped it on his pants and strapped it on. He left the apartment at 8:15 a.m. He didn't have time for coffee. He didn't have his vitamins. He felt hollow, lightheaded, and dangerously on edge. The lobby of his office building was a marvel of glass and steel. He had designed it. Usually, walking through these doors gave him a surge of power. Today, he just felt exposed. He marched past the security desk. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," the guard called out. Ethan ignored him. He jammed his finger into the elevator button. When he reached the 40th floor, Jessica was waiting. She looked relieved to see him, but her relief quickly turned to concern. "Mr. Carter, you're here. I thought, well, I look like what, Jessica?" Ethan snapped. He threw his briefcase onto her desk. "Do I look like I have time for fashion commentary?" "No, sir. It's just, your shirt collar is... Never mind." Ethan touched his collar. It was flipped up on one side. He smoothed it down, his face burning. "Coffee," he barked. "And get me the Henderson file. I need to prep for the meeting. The Henderson file is on your desk. Also, there's a gentleman waiting for you in conference room B. I don't have appointments. Send him away." "He says he's from the IRS, Mr. Carter. He has a badge." Ethan stopped. The air in the office seemed to drop 10 degrees. "The IRS?" "Yes. Agent Miller. He said it's urgent." Ethan felt a trickle of sweat run down his back. The IRS didn't just show up. They sent letters. They sent warnings. "Did we get any letters?" Ethan asked, his voice low. Jessica looked nervous. I don't know. Sarah usually handles your personal mail. She picks it up from the P.O. box on Mondays. I haven't seen her." Ethan closed his eyes. The P.O. box. He had forgotten about the P.O. box. He didn't even have the key. Sarah had the key on that leather keychain she left on the nightstand. "Fine," Ethan said. He straightened his jacket. I'll handle it. He walked into conference room B. A man in a gray suit was sitting at the table, a thick file in front of him. He looked like a man who enjoyed bad news. Mr. Carter, the agent said, not standing up. I'm Agent Miller. We've been trying to reach you for 3 months. I've been busy, Ethan said, taking a seat. He tried to project confidence, the architect of the year charisma. What seems to be the problem? The problem, Mr. Carter, is that your personal income tax filings for the last 2 years have some irregularities. Specifically, regarding the charitable deductions and the offshore accounts in the Caymans. Ethan laughed. A dry, brittle sound. I don't have accounts in the Caymans. My wife handles the books. She's very thorough. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. We sent 3 notices of audit, Miller said, sliding a paper across the table. This is the final notice. We need access to your full financial records by Friday, or we freeze your assets. Ethan stared at the paper. It was red. Final notice. Friday? Ethan stammered. That's 4 days away. You had 90 days, Mr. Carter. You chose to ignore them. I didn't ignore them. I didn't see them. Ignorance is not a defense. Friday, 9 Hong Kong a.m. Agent Miller stood up, closed his file, and walked out. Ethan sat alone in the conference room. The glass walls felt like they were closing in. He needed Sarah. She knew where the records were. She knew the accountant's private number. She knew how to talk to these people. She had always said, "Don't worry about the paperwork, Ethan. You just build the buildings. I'll keep the wolves at bay." The wolves were in the room now. He ran back to his office. He locked the door. He grabbed his phone. He dialed the house phone again, hoping against hope that she had just unplugged it. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. He slammed the phone down. He opened his banking app. He needed to see the damage. He logged into their joint checking account. He stared at the balance. $50,000. It should have been $100,000. He checked the transaction history. Friday, 4:00 p.m. Withdrawal. $50,000. Branch visit. She had gone to the bank the day he left for Paris. She had taken exactly half. He checked the savings account. Balance, $200,000. Transaction history, Friday, 4:15 p.m. Wire transfer to external account, $600,000. Half, exactly half. He checked the investment portfolio. It was frozen, pending a spousal division request. She hadn't just left. She had executed a financial amputation. She hadn't taken everything. If she had emptied the accounts, he could have called the police. He could have claimed theft. But she took half. By law, in New York, she was entitled to marital assets. She had taken exactly what a judge would have given her, but she had done it without the lawyers, without the waiting period. She had cashed out. "You calculated bitch," Ethan whispered. But beneath the anger, there was fear. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a strategy. He needed to find her, not to apologize anymore, but to get the tax records. If the IRS froze his assets on Friday, his firm would panic. His investors would pull out. His reputation would be ruined. He needed those files. Where did she keep them? He thought hard. The apartment, the office corner. He had looked in the drawers, but maybe he missed something. He grabbed his briefcase. He ignored the meeting with the city planners. "Cancel the meeting," he yelled at Jessica as he ran past her. "But sir, the mayor is coming. Tell him I have dysentery. Tell him the building is on fire. Just cancel it." Ethan tore the apartment apart. He wasn't an architect anymore. He was a vandal. He pulled the drawers out of Sarah's little desk and dumped them on the floor. Nothing but paper clips and old receipts for groceries. He went to the closet. He pulled down the shoeboxes on the top shelf. Old photos. Greeting cards. No tax returns. He went to the kitchen. He opened the pantry. He looked behind the cereal boxes. Nothing. He stood in the middle of the living room, breathing hard. Sweat dripped down his forehead. Think. Where did she hide things? She didn't hide things. She organized them. She was logical. "You need a system, Ethan," she used to say. "Chaos is just laziness in disguise." He remembered something. A safe. Not the wall safe in the bedroom where he kept his watches and cash. A different safe. Years ago, when they first moved in, Sarah had insisted on installing a fireproof floor safe in the utility closet. Ethan had laughed at her. "What do we have to protect? The nuclear codes?" He ran to the utility closet. He pushed aside the vacuum cleaner and the bucket of mops. He pulled up the loose floorboard. There it was, a small gray sentry safe. He stared at the keypad. 6 digits. He tried her birthday. 041285. Red light. Beep. He tried his birthday. 082083. Red light. Beep. He tried their anniversary. 061517. Red light. Beep. He kicked the safe. Open, damn it. He tried to think. What number would she use? What number mattered to her? He paused. He remembered the night of the award, the seed she had planted. If I wasn't here, would you remember how to tie your shoes? It wasn't a random insult. It was a reference. Their first date. They had gone ice skating. Ethan didn't know how to skate. He had fallen, and his laces had come undone. Sarah had knelt on the ice, laughing, and tied them for him. She had said, "I've got you. I'll always have you." That date. What was the date? November 12th, 2003. He punched in 10203. Green light. Click. Ethan let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He pulled the heavy door open. Inside there was a single USB drive. No papers, no files. Just a silver USB drive with a piece of masking tape on it. On the tape, written in Sarah's neat cursive handwriting, were 2 words. The Architect. Ethan grabbed the drive. He ran to his laptop. He plugged it in. A folder popped up on the screen. He clicked it. It wasn't tax returns. It was a manuscript. A PDF file titled The Shadow Builder, A Memoir of a Marriage. Ethan froze. He clicked on the file. It opened. Dedication. To Ethan, who built the towers while I poured the cement. He scrolled down. It wasn't just a diary. It was a detailed, day-by-day account of the last 10 years. Chapter 1. The Lie. Chapter 2. The First Betrayal. Chapter 5. The Taxes and the Cover-Up. He stopped. Chapter 5. He clicked on it. Ethan never asked where the extra money came from to fund the startup phase of the firm. He didn't want to know. He just wanted the check. So I signed the papers. I moved the funds from my trust. I forged the signatures on the loan documents because he was too busy to come to the bank. I created the shell company to hide the losses in 2021 so he wouldn't lose his confidence. I broke the law to keep his ego intact. And the documents are all here. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. She had documented everything, every illegal shortcut he had taken, or rather, that she had taken for him, every tax loophole, every forged signature. But she hadn't just documented it to incriminate him. She had documented it to show that she was the mastermind. At the bottom of the page was a hyperlink. Click here for scanned evidence. He didn't click it. He couldn't. If this got out, if the IRS saw this, he wouldn't just be broke. He would be in prison. And then he saw the final file in the folder. readme.txt. He opened it. Ethan, if you're reading this, the IRS has probably come calling. You're looking for the tax returns. They aren't here. I took the physical copies. And I deleted the digital backups from the cloud. You have until Friday. You know I always solve your problems. But this time the solution isn't free. I'm in Savannah. Come and find me. Alone. If you bring lawyers, if you bring the police, if you bring that girl, I will send the manuscript to Agent Miller, and then I will send it to the New York Times. You wanted a story, Ethan. You wanted a legacy. Now you have one. S. Ethan stared at the screen. The cursor blinked. Blink, blink, blink. It was a ransom note, but she wasn't asking for money. She was asking for him. He slammed the laptop shut. He stood up. He felt a strange sensation. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't fear. It was respect. For 10 years, he thought he was living with a mouse. A quiet, domestic creature who arranged flowers and ironed shirts. He was wrong. He had been living with a viper. A brilliant, calculating, patient viper. And he had stepped on her tail one too many times. He needed a drink. He went to the bar cart. He poured a scotch. His hand was steady now. The ambiguity was gone. He had a mission. He had to go to Savannah. He had to find her. He had to get those documents back. And then, well, he would figure out then when he got there. But he couldn't go like this. He couldn't go as the victim. He pulled out his phone. He dialed Chloe. "Hey, babe," she answered on the first ring. "I was just looking at travel brochures. How about Ibiza next?" "Chloe," Ethan said. His voice was cold, detached. "We're done." "What? What do you mean?" "I mean it's over. Don't call me. Don't text me. The credit card I gave you has been cancelled as of 5 minutes ago." "You can't do that. I bought tickets to a show tonight. Ethan!" He hung up. He blocked the number. He felt a weight lift. One problem down. The big problem remained. He went to the bedroom. He pulled out a duffel bag. He didn't pack a suit. He packed jeans. He packed sweaters. He packed his running shoes. He looked at the empty spot on the nightstand where her ring had been. He reached into his pocket. He had picked it up yesterday. He pulled it out. He put the ring on his pinky finger. It was too small to fit, so he put it in his pocket. He needed to be smart. Savannah was a small city, but it wasn't a village. "Come and find me," she had said. She wanted a game. He would play. He walked to the computer again. He needed a lead. The paper garden. That was the name of her business plan. The one he had ruined. He searched for it on Google. Nothing. He searched for Savannah bookstores opening soon. Nothing. She hadn't opened it yet. She was planning to. He remembered something else. Years ago, they had watched a movie set in Savannah. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Sarah had loved the squares. The moss. She had mentioned a specific square. "If I ever disappear, look for me in Chippewa Square, on the bench where Forrest Gump sat. It's the best place to watch people." It was a long shot, but it was all he had. Ethan walked out of the apartment. He didn't lock the door. What was the point? There was nothing left inside that mattered. The real assets, the evidence of his life, were in a suitcase in Georgia. He took the elevator down. "Calling a car, Mr. Carter?" the doorman asked. "No," Ethan said. "I'm driving." He went to the garage. He walked past his chauffeur-driven Mercedes Maybach. He walked to the back, under a tarp. There sat a 1969 Ford Mustang, dark green. It was the car he had bought when he graduated. The car he and Sarah had driven on their honeymoon. He hadn't driven it in 10 years. He kept it as a prop, a symbol of his rugged American roots. He pulled the tarp off. The car was dusty. He opened the door. The smell of old leather and gasoline hit him. It smelled like the past. He put the key in the ignition. He prayed it would start. He maintained it, paid a mechanic to come once a year. But still, he turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered. Then, with a roar, it came to life. A deep, guttural growl. Ethan gripped the steering wheel. The vibration traveled up his arms. "Okay, Sarah," he whispered. "You want the old Ethan? You want the man who could tie his own shoes?" He revved the engine. "I'm coming." He peeled out of the garage, the tires screeching against the concrete. He drove out into the New York night, merging into the traffic, heading south toward the Holland Tunnel. He was leaving the city of glass towers. He was heading into the deep, humid, mysterious south. The architect was gone. The hunter was born. But as he drove, a single thought nagged at him, a cold splinter in his brain. "She knows I'm coming. She wants me to come. What is she planning to do with me when I get there?" The interstate was a gray ribbon stretching into infinity. The 1969 Mustang, a beast of American steel, roared beneath Ethan. For the first 3 hours, the noise was empowering. It was the sound of action, of agency. But by hour 6, as he crossed the border from Virginia into North Carolina, the roar had become a drill boring into his skull. Ethan's back ached. The bucket seats, designed for style rather than lumbar support, were torture. The suspension was stiff, transmitting every crack in the asphalt directly to his spine. And the air conditioning, a primitive system from a bygone era, blew only a faint, wheezing stream of lukewarm air. He was sweating. His designer jeans stuck to the leather. His t-shirt, usually crisp and expensive, was damp and wrinkled. He was driving south, but he felt like he was driving backward in time. He stopped at a motel outside of Fayetteville. It was a low, flat building, with a flickering neon sign that buzzed like a trapped insect. The Bluebird Motor Inn. The D in Bluebird was burnt out. The Bluebird Motor Inn. Ethan parked the Mustang. He got out, his legs stiff. The air here was different. It was thicker, heavier. It smelled of pine needles and damp earth. He checked into a room. The clerk, a woman with hair the color of straw and a cigarette dangling from her lip, didn't ask for his ID. She just took the cash and slid a physical key across the Formica counter. "Ice machine's round back," she rasped. "Checkout's at 11. The room smelled of lemon polish and stale smoke. The carpet was a kaleidoscope of brown and orange geometric shapes. Ethan threw his duffel bag on the bed. He didn't care about the thread count. He just needed to stop moving. He sat on the edge of the bed. He pulled out his laptop. He needed to know. He opened the USB drive. He clicked on the folder. The Shadow Builder. He scrolled to Chapter 2. The dinner party. He remembered the party. It was 5 years ago. He had just landed the contract for the Municipal Museum. They had hosted the city council at the penthouse. He remembered it as a triumph. He remembered being witty, charming, and the perfect host. He began to read Sarah's version. Ethan thinks the museum dinner was his victory. He doesn't know that Councilman Miller is allergic to shellfish. Ethan had ordered a seafood tower. I caught the caterers in the hallway 5 minutes before the guests arrived. I paid them double to run to the deli down the street and buy chicken. I plated it myself in the back while Ethan was fixing his hair. When Miller ate the chicken, he thanked Ethan for his thoughtfulness. Ethan nodded and said, "I always pay attention to the details." He believed it. He actually believed he had ordered the chicken. That is Ethan's superpower. He edits reality in real time until he is the hero of every story. Ethan stopped reading. He stared at the glowing screen. He remembered that moment. He remembered Miller thanking him. He remembered feeling proud of his memory. I didn't order the chicken. He tried to access the memory, to find the file in his brain where he had called the caterer. It wasn't there. There was just a blank space, a space Sarah had filled. He felt a flush of heat that had nothing to do with the humidity. It was shame, but it was a defensive shame. "She's rewriting history," he muttered. "She's making me look incompetent to justify leaving." He closed the laptop. He couldn't read anymore. Not tonight. He lay down on the lumpy mattress. He listened to the sound of trucks rumbling past on the highway. He was the great architect, the man who shaped skylines. And here he was, in a $40 motel room, realizing that the foundation of his life was made of sand, and his wife had been the one holding back the tide. The next morning, the Mustang didn't want to start. It cranked sluggishly, a heavy, metallic groan. "Come on," Ethan pleaded. He pumped the gas pedal. "Don't do this to me." Finally, it coughed to life, spewing a cloud of black smoke that hung in the humid air. The drive through South Carolina was a blur of pine trees and billboards advertising fireworks and peaches. The further south he drove, the more the world changed. The sharp, frantic energy of the Northeast dissolved into a slow, languid rhythm. The drivers were slower. The sun was hotter. He crossed the bridge into Savannah in the late afternoon. The city hit him like a physical force. It wasn't the vertical awe of New York. It was a horizontal, suffocating beauty. Giant live oaks draped in Spanish moss formed tunnels over the streets. The light was filtered, golden and green. The air was so thick you could almost chew it. Ethan navigated the narrow, grid-like streets. He felt oversized in the Mustang. The engine was too loud for this quiet, haunted city. He found Chippewa Square. He parked the car illegally in a loading zone. He didn't care. He got out. The square was a small park, enclosed by iron fences and surrounded by historic buildings. In the center stood a statue of James Oglethorpe. Tourists were taking photos. A horse-drawn carriage clattered by on the cobblestones. Ethan walked into the square. He looked around. "Look for me in Chippewa Square, on the bench where Forrest Gump sat." He scanned the benches. There were people sitting. An old man feeding pigeons, a young couple holding hands, a student reading a book. Sarah was not there. He hadn't really expected her to be sitting there waiting for him. Had he? It wasn't a movie. He walked to a bench, the one that looked like the spot from the film, though he knew the actual movie bench was in a museum somewhere. He sat down. He waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 30. The sweat trickled down his back. A net buzzed around his ear. He swatted it away angrily. "This is stupid," he said aloud. "Talking to the bugs?" Ethan looked up. A man was standing there. He was wearing a linen suit that had seen better days and a straw hat. He looked like a character from a Tennessee Williams play who had fallen on hard times. "Excuse me?" Ethan said. "The Ness," the man said, sitting down on the other end of the bench. "They don't care if you're rich or poor. They bite everybody. We call them sand gnats. Nasty little devils." Ethan shifted away. "I'm just waiting for someone." "In Savannah, waiting is an activity," the man drawled. "We don't rush. The heat won't let you." "Who you looking for?" Ethan hesitated. "My wife. She likes this square." "Pretty lady?" "Yes. Tall, brown hair, quiet." The man laughed. A wheezing, tobacco-stained sound. "Son, that describes half the women in this town. You got a name?" "Sarah. Sarah Carter." The man thought for a moment, tilting his head back. "Carter. Don't know a Carter, but this town is small. People talk. If she's new, she'll stick out. New people walk too fast. They look at their watches too much. Like you." Ethan looked down at his Patek Philippe. He covered it with his hand. She's opening a bookstore, Ethan said. Or an art gallery. The paper garden. The man's eyes lit up. Ah, the paper garden. Now that rings a bell. Not open yet, but there's been work going on. Over on Jones Street, the old Abernathy place, saw a lady directing the painters last week. Real particular about the shade of blue for the shutters. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. Particular about the shade of blue. That was Sarah. She could spend 3 hours debating the difference between cerulean and azure. Where is Jones Street? Ethan asked, standing up. 2 blocks over. Prettiest street in America, they say. But watch out, son. Watch out for what? The Abernathy place is haunted. They say old man Abernathy died of a broken heart waiting for his bride to come back from Charleston. She never did. Ethan stared at the man. I don't believe in ghosts. You're in Savannah now, the man said, closing his eyes and leaning back. Give it time. Ethan ran. He forgot the heat. He forgot the exhaustion. He ran 2 blocks south. He turned onto Jones Street. The man was right. It was beautiful. High-arched trees, brick sidewalks, grand houses with high stoops and iron railings. He scanned the house numbers. The old Abernathy place. He saw it. It was a townhouse, slightly more weathered than its neighbors. Scaffolding covered the front facade. There was a sign in the window, hand-painted on wood. Coming soon, the paper garden. Ethan stopped. He stood on the sidewalk, breathing hard. He had found it. He walked up the steps. The front door was a deep, glossy black. He reached out to knock, then stopped. What if she was in there? What would he say? I found you, give me the tax returns? No. He needed leverage. He needed to assess the situation. He tried to peer through the window. It was covered with brown paper from the inside. He couldn't see anything. He backed down the stairs. He walked to the side of the house. There was a narrow alleyway leading to a carriage house in the back. A wrought iron gate blocked the path. Ethan rattled the gate. Locked. He looked up at the second floor. A window was open. White sheer curtains billowed in the breeze. Suddenly, a sound drifted down. Music. It was a cello. Low, mournful, and incredibly complex. Ethan froze. Sarah didn't play the cello. She played the piano. She hated the cello. She said it sounded like a human crying. He listened. The music stopped. Then a voice. A man's voice. That was beautiful, Sarah. But try the transition to the minor key again. Slower this time. Feel the hesitation. Then Sarah's voice. Clear. Light. Like this? The cello started again. Tentative at first, then stronger. Ethan gripped the iron bars of the gate until his palms hurt. She was playing the cello. She was learning something new. And there was a man in there with her, teaching her. A wave of jealousy, hot and acidic, rose in his throat. It wasn't the sexual jealousy he felt with Chloe. This was different. This was intellectual jealousy. This was growth jealousy. She was evolving. She was becoming someone he didn't know. He wanted to scream her name. He wanted to kick the gate down, but he didn't. He remembered the text file. If you bring lawyers, if you bring the police, I will send the manuscript. If he caused a scene, she would destroy him. He stepped back into the shadows of a large oak tree. He would watch. He would wait. Night fell over Savannah like a velvet blanket. The gas lamps flickered on, casting long, dancing shadows on the brick streets. Ethan was still standing across the street, leaning against the Mustang. He had moved the car so it had a direct line of sight to the house. At 7:20 p.m., the front door opened. Ethan ducked behind the dashboard. Sarah stepped out. Ethan gasped. She looked different. In New York, Sarah wore structured clothes, tailored blazers, pencil skirts, neutral colors. Her hair was always pulled back in a tight chignon. The woman standing on the stoop was wearing a long, flowy linen dress, the color of terracotta. Her hair was loose, falling in soft waves around her shoulders. She was wearing sandals. She looked younger, softer, and yet she stood taller. A man followed her out. He wasn't what Ethan expected. He wasn't a young, handsome artist. He was older, maybe 50. He had messy gray hair, glasses on a chain, and he was wearing a paint-stained apron over a t-shirt. He looked kind, rumpled. He handed Sarah a set of keys. Don't stay too late at the market, Sarah, the man said. His voice was the one Ethan had heard earlier, the teacher. And remember, the cello needs humidity. Don't leave it by the window. I know, Arthur. Thank you, Arthur. Sarah walked down the steps. She didn't look like a woman hiding. She looked like a woman who owned the street. She began to walk west. Ethan waited for her to turn the corner. Then he started the Mustang. He didn't turn on the headlights. He let the car roll slowly, following her at a distance. She walked for 10 minutes until she reached a grocery store. A small, local market, not a chain. She went inside. Ethan parked and watched. Through the glass front, he saw her. She was buying fruit. She was squeezing avocados. She was laughing with the cashier, laughing. Ethan tried to remember the last time he had made her laugh. Really laugh. Not just a polite chuckle at a dinner party. He couldn't. She came out carrying 2 brown paper bags. She didn't call an Uber. She walked. Ethan followed her back to the house. She let herself in. The lights went on downstairs. Then upstairs. Ethan sat in the car. He was hungry. He was tired. He needed a bathroom. He pulled out his phone. He opened the manuscript again. He needed to understand. Chapter 3. The cello. He clicked it. I always wanted to play the cello. I told Ethan this on our second date. He said, "The cello is too big. It's awkward. The piano is more elegant, so I played the piano." For 15 years, I played the piano because he thought it looked better in the living room. I hated it. I hated facing the wall while I played. I wanted to embrace the instrument. I wanted to feel the vibration against my chest. When I leave, the first thing I will do is buy a cello. Even if I'm terrible at it, I will play the saddest song I know, and it will be the happiest moment of my life. Ethan looked up at the window. The cello music had started again. He felt a tear slide down his cheek. He wiped it away angrily. "You're terrible at it," he whispered, lying to himself. "You're out of tune." But she wasn't. The melody was haunting. It drifted through the humid air, wrapping around the car, wrapping around Ethan's heart, squeezing tight. He couldn't sleep in the car. He needed a base of operations. He drove to a hotel a few blocks away, the mansion on Forsyth Park. It was expensive, eclectic, and dramatic. He walked into the lobby. His credit card was maxed out from the flight to Paris and the hotel there. He had the debit card for the joint account, which had $50,000 left. He approached the desk. "I need a room," he said. "For a week." "Certainly, sir. May I have a card for incidentals?" Ethan handed over the debit card. He prayed she hadn't cancelled it in the last hour. "Thank you, Mr. Carter. You're all set." Ethan went to his room. It was luxurious, filled with art and velvet. But it felt empty. He took a shower. He washed off the sweat and the road grime. He looked at himself in the mirror. He looked thinner. His eyes were dark circles. The stubble on his chin was turning into a beard. He ordered room service. A steak. He needed protein. While he ate, he formulated a plan. He couldn't just confront her. She had the upper hand. She had the documents. She had the manuscript. He needed to steal the evidence. He needed to get into that house, find the physical copies of the tax returns. She said she took them. And find the digital backups if she had lied about deleting them. He needed to break in. Ethan Carter, Architect of the Year, was going to commit burglary. But not tonight. Tonight, he needed intel. He opened his laptop again. He searched for Arthur Savannah Cello. Results popped up immediately. Arthur Vance, former first cellist of the London Symphony Orchestra, retired, now runs a private conservatory and art collective in Savannah. He clicked on the images. It was the man in the apron. Arthur Vance was a legend, a recluse, and somehow Sarah had befriended him. Ethan felt a pang of inadequacy. He was just a builder. Arthur Vance was an artist. He searched for the property records of the house on Jones Street. Owner, the Paper Garden LLC. Registered agent, Sarah Carter. She had bought the house. With what money? He went back to the manuscript. Chapter 6. The Inheritance. Ethan thinks my grandmother left me a small nest egg, enough for a few vacations. He never asked the amount. He never asked to see the will. He assumed that because she lived in a small cottage in Maine, she was poor. He didn't know that she owned 500 acres of timberland that she sold to the State Conservation Fund in the 90s. The inheritance wasn't a nest egg. It was a fortress. I kept it separate. I never commingled the funds. It was my escape hatch. I hoped I would never have to use it, but I kept the key oiled, just in case. Ethan dropped his fork. She was rich, independently wealthy. She hadn't needed his money. She hadn't needed his lifestyle. She stayed because she loved him. And that realization hurt more than the bankruptcy. If she stayed for love, and then she left, it meant the love was completely, utterly dead. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a purpose. He went to a hardware store. He bought a pair of binoculars, a flashlight, a dark hoodie, gloves. He felt ridiculous, like a teenager playing spy. But he had no choice. He spent the day staking out the house. He sat in the square, watching. At 9:00 a.m., Sarah left. She was wearing work clothes, overalls and a bandana. She carried a paint bucket. She worked on the front of the house, painting the shutters, a vibrant, deep teal blue, cerulean. Arthur came out and helped her. They talked. They laughed. Arthur brought her lemonade. At one point, Sarah got paint on her nose. Arthur reached out and wiped it off with his thumb. Ethan flinched. The gesture was intimate, familiar. "Don't touch her," Ethan growled from behind his newspaper. At 12 p.m., they went inside for lunch. At 2 p.m., a delivery truck arrived. Books. Hundreds of boxes of books. Sarah signed for them. She looked exhausted but happy. She carried boxes that looked too heavy for her. Ethan instinctively started to stand up to help her, then sat back down. "She doesn't want your help." At 5 p.m., the work stopped. Sarah showered and changed. She left the house alone. She walked to the riverfront. Ethan followed. She sat on a bench overlooking the Savannah River. Massive cargo ships drifted by. She opened a notebook and began to write. Ethan crept closer. He hid behind a large azalea bush. He was close enough to hear her breathing. She pulled out her phone. She dialed a number. Ethan's phone didn't ring. She was talking to someone else. "Hi, Mom," Sarah said. Ethan froze. Sarah's mother had died 3 years ago. "I know, Mom. I know you can't hear me. But I did it. I'm here. The shutters are blue. It looks just like the picture you drew for me when I was little." She paused. "I miss him, Mom. God, I miss him. I miss the way he smells. I miss the way he frowns when he's concentrating. But I can't go back. I can't be a ghost anymore. If he comes, if he finds me, I have to be strong. I have to kill the part of me that needs him." Ethan stopped breathing. "She misses me." It was a lifeline, a fraying, thin thread, but a thread nonetheless. She wasn't indifferent. She was hurting. "I'm going to ruin him, Mom," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "I have to. It's the only way he'll learn. He has to hit the bottom. He has to break. Only when he's broken can he be rebuilt. I'm not destroying him out of hate. I'm destroying him out of hope." She wiped her eyes. She stood up. "Goodbye, Mom." She turned and walked away, back toward the city. Ethan stayed behind the bush. He sank to his knees in the dirt. She wasn't just punishing him. She was architecting him. She was deconstructing the building because the foundation was rotten, and she wanted to build a new one. But the deadline was Friday. The IRS. If she didn't give him the documents by Friday, the demolition would be permanent. He checked his watch. It was Wednesday evening. He had 36 hours. He had to make contact. But he couldn't just walk up to her. She had said, alone. She had said, "Come find me." He needed to make an entrance. He needed to show her that he wasn't just the arrogant CEO anymore. He needed to show her he was paying attention. He stood up. He looked at the river. He had a plan. It was risky. It was theatrical. It was exactly the kind of grand gesture Ethan Carter was known for. But this time, the audience was an audience of one. He walked back to the Mustang. He drove to the art supply store. He bought a canvas. He bought paints. He drove back to the hotel. He cleared the desk. He wasn't a painter. He was an architect. But he knew lines. He knew perspective. He began to draw. He didn't draw a building. He drew a pair of shoes. Old, scuffed ice skates, with the laces tied in a perfect complex knot. And underneath, he wrote a single sentence. I remember the date, November 12th, 2003. He would deliver it tomorrow. It would be his opening move. Ethan stared at the canvas. It was a crude drawing. He was an architect, accustomed to straight lines, rulers, and CAD software. Freehand drawing was messy. The charcoal smudged on his fingers. The proportions of the iced skates were slightly off. One looked more like a combat boot than a delicate figure skate. But the knot was perfect. He had spent an hour detailing the intricate tangle of laces. The specific double loop knot Sarah had taught him on that frozen pond 22 years ago. He signed it, not with his signature, but with a date, 11/12/03. He wrapped the canvas in brown paper. It looked like a bomb. In a way it was. It was Thursday morning. The humidity in Savannah was already rising, turning the air into a wet blanket. Ethan drove the Mustang to Jones Street. He parked a block away. He didn't want the engine's roar to announce his arrival. He walked to the paper garden. The street was quiet. The painters hadn't arrived yet. He placed the package on the top step, leaning it against the glossy black door. He didn't knock. He turned and walked away, his heart beating a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He retreated to the square, taking up his position on the bench. He raised the binoculars. At 8:30 a.m., the door opened. Sarah stepped out, holding a mug of steaming tea. She was wearing a silk robe, her hair wrapped in a towel. She looked domestic, intimate, a version of Sarah he had never seen, the morning Sarah, who didn't have to rush to make his coffee. She saw the package. She paused. She looked left, then right. She scanned the street. Ethan ducked behind his newspaper, though he was sure she couldn't see him from that distance. She bent down and picked it up. She took it inside. The door closed. Ethan lowered the binoculars. "Your move," he whispered. Inside the townhouse, Sarah placed the package on the kitchen island. Her hands were trembling. She knew who it was from. The brown paper was taped with surgical precision, parallel lines, perfectly cut edges. Ethan's style. She ripped the paper open. The canvas fell out, the charcoal sketch of the skates. The knot, the date. Sarah gasped. She covered her mouth with her hand. She had expected him to come with lawyers. She had expected him to come with threats. She hadn't expected this. It was a weaponized memory. He was using their history to pick the lock of her resolve. "He remembers," she whispered. Arthur walked into the kitchen, wiping paint off his hands. He saw the drawing. He saw Sarah's face, pale, eyes wide. "He's here?" Arthur asked quietly. Sarah nodded. She touched the charcoal lines. "He figured out the safe code. That's what this means. He knows I didn't delete the files. What are you going to do?" Sarah stared at the drawing. For a moment, she felt a flicker of the old instinct. The urge to fix it, to save him, to run into his arms because he had made one small gesture. Then, she remembered the empty pill dispenser. She remembered the ruined business plan. She remembered the 10 years of invisibility. She hardened. "He thinks a drawing makes up for a decade of neglect," Sarah said, her voice turning steel cold. "He thinks he can charm his way out of the wreckage." She grabbed a black marker from the counter. She wrote on the brown wrapping paper, in big, bold letters, "Bonaventure Cemetery, the Gracie statue, 600 p.m. p.m. Don't be late." She walked to the window and taped the paper against the glass, facing the street. Ethan saw the sign through his binoculars. Bonaventure Cemetery. Of course. It was dramatic. It was Southern Gothic. It was exactly the kind of stage Sarah would set for a confrontation. He spent the rest of the day pacing in his hotel room. He checked his phone every 10 minutes. No emails from the IRS yet. But it was Thursday afternoon. The deadline was Friday morning at 9 a.m. He had less than 20 hours. He dressed carefully. No suit this time. He wore dark jeans, a white linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and boots. He wanted to look rugged, capable. He wanted to look like a man who could handle the South. He drove to the cemetery. It was located on a bluff overlooking the Wilmington River. It was a city of the dead, vast, overgrown, and breathtakingly beautiful. Massive live oaks formed a canopy over the graves, their branches heavy with Spanish moss that swayed like gray ghosts. He parked the Mustang. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, golden shadows across the tombstones. He walked toward the river. He knew where the Gracie statue was. It was a famous landmark, a statue of a little girl that people left toys for. He saw her. She was standing by the iron fence overlooking the water. She was wearing a white dress. In the fading light, she looked ethereal. Ethan approached. His boots crunched on the gravel path. She didn't turn around. "You're late," she said. Ethan checked his watch. "It's 5:58 p.m. I'm 2 minutes early." "You're 10 years late, Ethan." She turned. Her eyes were dry, clear and piercing. There was no warmth in them. Ethan stopped a few feet away. He wanted to reach out, to touch her arm, to ground himself. But the air around her crackled with a static charge that warned him to keep his distance. "I found you," Ethan said. "I solved the puzzle." "Congratulations. You figured out a date. Do you want a gold star?" "I want the files, Sarah. The tax returns. The backups. You know the IRS is coming for me tomorrow. If I don't have those records, they'll freeze everything. The firm will collapse." Sarah smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "The firm. That's all you care about. Not us. Not me. The firm. The firm is us, Sarah. It pays for your life. It pays for this little sabbatical you're taking." "Sabbatical?" Sarah laughed. a harsh sound that startled a crow in the tree above. Ethan, I'm not on vacation. I'm gone. I left you. You can't leave me. We're partners. We were never partners. I was your employee, an unpaid, unappreciated employee who also happened to warm your bed. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. I read the interview in Architectural Digest. Domestic. Folds the laundry. Is that really all you think I did? Ethan flinched. He remembered the interview. He hadn't thought she would see it so soon. I was just talking to the press, Sarah. It's a persona. You know that. I know that the persona ate the man, she said. There's nothing left of Ethan Carter inside that suit. Just ego and sawdust. Stop the psychoanalysis, Ethan shouted. His voice echoed through the quiet cemetery. I am here for the files. Give them to me. I'll give you whatever you want. You want a divorce? Fine. You want half the money? Take it. You want the townhouse? It's yours. Just give me the drive. Sarah reached into her pocket. She pulled out the silver USB drive. Ethan's eyes locked onto it. Give it to me. She held it over the railing. Below, the Wilmington River churned, dark and murky. Don't! Ethan lunged forward. Stay back, Sarah warned. She dangled the drive by its lanyard. One step closer, and it swims. Ethan froze. Sarah, please. That drive is my life. No, Ethan. That drive is your lie. Your life is standing right here, begging you to see her. She pulled the drive back and clutched it in her fist. You want this? You have to earn it. Earn it? I've worked 18 hours a day for 15 years. You worked for yourself. You never worked for us. So here's the deal. She took a breath. I have a shipment of bookshelves arriving at the store tomorrow morning at 6:00 a.m. They are solid oak, heavy, unassembled. I need them moved to the second floor and built before the grand opening preview at noon. Ethan stared at her. You want me to move furniture? I want you to sweat, Ethan. I want you to use your hands for something other than signing checks. I want you to feel the weight of building something real. This is ridiculous. I can hire movers. I'll pay for the best team in the city. No, Sarah said sharply. You, alone. No movers, no assistants, just you. If you finish building the shelves by noon, I give you the drive. You can email the files to Agent Miller just in time. And if I refuse, then I drop this drive in the river, and I send the manuscript to the IRS. Ethan looked at her. She was serious. She was insane, but she was serious. You're blackmailing me into manual labor. Call it an internship, she said. Start at the bottom. See if you can climb your way back up. She turned and walked away, her white dress glowing in the twilight. 6:00 a.m., Ethan. Don't wear the loafers. Ethan didn't sleep. He spent the night in his hotel room, pacing, drinking coffee, and cursing. It was humiliating. It was absurd. But he had no choice. At 5:45 a.m. on Friday, he parked the Mustang on Jones Street. He was wearing his jeans and a t-shirt he had bought at Walmart because he didn't want to ruin his linen one. He wore work gloves. He looked at the townhouse. The delivery truck was already there. A massive pallet of wood sat on the sidewalk. Sarah was standing on the stoop, drinking coffee. Arthur was with her. Good morning, intern, Sarah said. Let's just get this over with, Ethan grumbled. He walked to the pallet. He grabbed a box. It was heavy, at least 50 pounds. Second floor, Sarah said. The library room. Arthur will show you. Arthur led the way. He didn't offer to help carry. He just held the door. Ethan lugged the box up the stairs. The staircase was narrow and winding. The box scraped against the wall. Careful, Sarah called out from below. That's hand-painted wallpaper. Ethan gritted his teeth. Sorry. He carried box after box. 10 boxes. 20 boxes. By 8:00 a.m., he was drenched in sweat. His back was screaming. His hands were blistering inside the cheap gloves. He collapsed on the floor of the second-story library. It was a beautiful room, filled with light. But right now, it was a prison. Water break, Arthur said, handing him a bottle. Ethan drank it in one gulp. Thanks. You've got good form, Arthur said, watching him. For a suit. I used to work construction in college, Ethan said, wiping his forehead. Before I became who I am. And who are you? Arthur asked. Ethan looked at the old man. I'm the guy who pays for all of this. Arthur chuckled. Money buys the wood, son. It doesn't build the shelf. The building phase was worse. Ethan opened the boxes. It was an intricate system of joinery. No screws. Just wood fitting into wood. Japanese style. Of course, Ethan muttered. She couldn't buy IKEA. She had to buy artisanal puzzles. He struggled. The pieces didn't fit. He hammered one with his fist. It cracked. Damn it. Sarah walked in. She saw the cracked wood. You're forcing it, she said calmly. Architecture isn't about force, Ethan. It's about alignment. I know what architecture is, he snapped. He threw the hammer down. I design skyscrapers. I don't need a lesson on shelving from a failed editor. The room went silent. Sarah looked at him. The hurt flashed in her eyes. Raw and deep. I wasn't a failed editor, she said quietly. I quit. To help you. Because you were drowning, and you were too proud to ask for a life raft. Ethan stood up. He was shaking with exhaustion and rage. I never asked you to quit. You wanted to play the martyr. You wanted to control me. I wanted to love you, Sarah yelled back. But you made it impossible. You turned every act of kindness into a transaction. You weighed my love against your success and decided I was just overhead cost. They stood there, breathing heavy, the air between them thick with 10 years of unsaid words. Suddenly, a loud, jarring sound cut through the tension. A car horn, a musical, customized car horn playing La Cucaracha. Honk, 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 honk. It was coming from the street. Ethan froze. He knew that horn. He ran to the window. Double parked next to his Mustang was a bright red convertible rental car. And standing next to it, wearing a neon pink jumpsuit and oversized sunglasses, was Chloe. She was waving at the house. Ethan! Ethan! Come out, Daddy! I found you! Ethan felt the blood drain from his body. He turned to Sarah. Sarah was looking out the window. Her face went blank. The anger, the passion, the hurt, it all vanished, replaced by a cold, deadly exhaustion. You brought her, Sarah said. No, Ethan stammered. No, Sarah, I swear. I broke up with her. I blocked her number. I didn't tell her where I was. She's here, Ethan, which means you are exactly who I thought you were. Sarah, please. She must have tracked the car or the credit card. I didn't invite her. It doesn't matter, Sarah said. She walked to the door. The deal is off. No, I built the shelves. I did the work. Give me the drive. Sarah turned. You missed the point, Ethan. It wasn't about the shelves. It was about showing me that you could exist in my world without polluting it. And look, she pointed out the window at Chloe, who was now yelling at a pedestrian. Pollution. Sarah, the EngSub, it's Friday. It's 10 Hontig a.m. I have 1 hour. Tell it to your girlfriend, Sarah said. She walked out of the room. She locked the door from the outside. Click. Ethan ran to the door. He pounded on it. Sarah, open this door. Sarah. He heard her footsteps fading down the stairs. He was trapped in a room with half-built shelves, with his mistress screaming outside, and his wife walking away with the evidence that could send him to prison. Ethan looked around the room frantically. He needed to get out. The window. He looked down. It was a 15-foot drop to the garden. He didn't care. He opened the window. Ethan! Chloe screamed from the street. Oh my God, are you jumping? Is it a romantic gesture? Like Romeo and Juliet? Shut up, Chloe, Ethan roared. He climbed out onto the ledge. He grabbed the trellis, a sturdy iron lattice covered in jasmine. He climbed down. The thorns tore at his clothes. He ripped his t-shirt. He scratched his arm. He hit the ground. He ran to the front of the house. Sarah was getting into Arthur's beat-up Volvo. Arthur was driving. Sarah! Ethan yelled, sprinting toward them. Chloe intercepted him. She threw her arms around his neck. Babe! I was so worried. Why did you block me? I had to hire a cyber guy to track your IP address from the hotel Wi-Fi. Isn't that smart of me? Ethan shoved her away. Get off me! He reached the Volvo just as it pulled away. He slapped the window. Sarah! The drive! Sarah looked at him through the glass. She held up her phone. On the screen, a message was displayed. Sent to agentmillerirs.gov. Attachment, the Shadow Builder full manuscript. PDF. Ethan stopped running. He stood in the middle of Jones Street, gasping for air. She had sent it. It was done. Oh my God, Chloe said, coming up behind him, clicking her heels on the pavement. Is that your wife? She looks old. And what is she driving? A Volvo? Gross. Ethan turned slowly to look at Chloe. He looked at her neon jumpsuit. He looked at her vacuous face. He looked at the creature he had blown up his life for. He began to laugh. It started as a chuckle, then grew into a hysterical, manic laugh that frightened the tourists on the sidewalk. It's over, Ethan said. laughing until tears ran down his dusty, sweat-streaked face. "It's all over." "What's over, babe?" Chloe asked, checking her nails. "Can we go for brunch now? I'm starving." Ethan looked at her. His eyes were wild. "Brunch?" he whispered. "Yeah, eggs Benny. Mimosas." Ethan grabbed her shoulders. "Chloe, listen to me carefully. I have $0. My accounts are frozen. The IRS is about to raid my office. I am going to prison for tax fraud. And this car," he kicked the Mustang, "this car is probably going to be seized by the government by noon." Chloe stared at him. Her mouth fell open. "You're broke? Bankrupt? Destitute? Ruined?" Chloe blinked. She took a step back. She looked at the Mustang. She looked at Ethan's dirty clothes. "Oh," she said. She pulled out her phone. "Uber," she muttered. "Airport." "Leaving so soon?" Ethan asked, his voice dripping with venom. "I don't do poor Ethan. It's bad for my skin." She turned and walked away, back to her red rental car. She got in and drove off, leaving Ethan standing alone in the middle of the most beautiful street in America. Ethan sat on the curb. He put his head in his hands. He checked his phone. 10:05 a.m. Email from Jessica, assistant. "Mr. Carter, the IRS is here. They have a warrant. They are seizing the computers. Where are you?" Email from Agent Miller. "Mr. Carter, we received the documentation from your wife. It is illuminating. We advise you to surrender yourself at the nearest federal building immediately." Ethan dropped the phone on the pavement. He looked up at the house. The paper garden. The door was locked. The shelves were half built. The painting of the skates was probably in the trash. He had lost. He had lost the money. He had lost the firm. He had lost the girl. Both of them. But strangely, as he sat there in the dirt, he didn't feel the panic he expected. He felt a strange, hollow lightness. The weight of the lie, the 10 years of pretending to be a genius, pretending to be perfect, was gone. The building had collapsed. The dust was settling. Now he was just a man sitting on a curb. A shadow fell over him. He looked up. It was Arthur. The old man had come back. He wasn't in the Volvo. He was standing there, holding a key. "She sent the manuscript," Ethan said dully. "She destroyed me." "She sent the manuscript," Arthur agreed. "But she didn't send the addendum." "What addendum?" Arthur sat down on the curb next to him. "Sarah made a deal with Agent Miller," Arthur said. "She turned over the evidence of the fraud. But she also turned over evidence that she was the one who orchestrated the cover-up initially. She implicated herself as a co-conspirator to mitigate your sentence. She took half the blame." Ethan stared at Arthur. "Why? Why would she do that?" "Because she doesn't want you in prison for 20 years, Ethan. She wants you to pay your debt, yes, but she doesn't want to bury you." Arthur held out the key. "She's gone," Arthur said. "She took a train to Charleston. She said she couldn't watch you fall. But she left you this." "What is it?" "The key to the bookstore." Ethan looked at the brass key. "Why?" "She said the shelves still need to be built," Arthur said, standing up and dusting off his pants. "And since you don't have a job anymore, and you're going to need character references for your trial, she suggests you finish the work." Arthur walked away. Ethan sat there, holding the key. He looked at the house, the paper garden. He had built skyscrapers. He had built museums. He had built a monument to himself. Now he had to build a bookshelf. He stood up. He picked up his phone. He walked up the steps. He unlocked the black door. He walked inside. The smell of sawdust and fresh paint greeted him. It smelled like a beginning. He walked up the stairs to the library. He picked up the hammer. He looked at the cracked wood. "Alignment," he whispered. "Not force." He began to work. The sound of the hammer was different now. It wasn't the frantic, angry smashing of a man trying to force the world to bend to his will. It was a rhythmic, steady tap, tap, tap. Ethan knelt on the hard pine floor of the library. His knees were bruised. His knuckles were raw and wrapped in masking tape because he didn't have band-aids. He held a piece of white oak. He checked the grain. He aligned the dovetail joint. He breathed in. He breathed out. He tapped it into place. It fit. Perfectly. He sat back on his heels and looked at the shelf. It was sturdy. It was level. It was beautiful in a quiet, unpretentious way. He looked around the room. It was 4:00 a.m. on Saturday. He had been working for 18 hours straight. The library was finished. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined the walls, smelling of raw timber and beeswax. Ethan stood up. His back seized. A spasm of pain that shot down his leg. He groaned, leaning against the ladder. He was hungry. He was thirsty. He smelled like sweat and failure. But for the first time in 10 years, his mind was quiet. The constant ticker tape of stock prices, project deadlines, and public opinion polls that usually ran through his brain had stopped. There was only the wood, the room, the silence. He walked to the window. Jones Street was sleeping under the gas lamps. He checked his phone. It was lying on the windowsill, plugged into a charger he had found in a drawer. He had ignored 50 calls from his lawyers. He had ignored 20 emails from the press. He opened his email. He found the one from Agent Miller. Mr. Carter, we are aware of your location. We will be executing the warrant at 9 a.m. Saturday. We appreciate your cooperation. Ethan stared at the screen. 5 hours left. He could run. He could take the Mustang, if they hadn't booted it yet, and drive to Mexico. He had heard people did that. He looked at the shelves. He ran his hand along the smooth edge of the wood. No, he whispered. He wasn't running anymore. Sarah hadn't run. She had walked away, yes, but she hadn't run from the truth. She had faced it. She had sent the manuscript. He walked downstairs. He found a broom. He began to sweep. He swept the sawdust into neat little piles. He wiped down the counters. He polished the glass on the front door. He wanted the place to be perfect. Not for him, for her. At 8:55 a.m., Ethan stepped out onto the front stoop. He had washed his face in the kitchen sink. He had tried to comb his hair with his fingers. He was wearing his dirty t-shirt and jeans covered in sawdust. 2 black SUVs pulled up to the curb, silent, ominous. 4 men in windbreakers with IRS, criminal investigation, printed on the back got out. Agent Miller was in the lead. He walked up the steps. He looked at Ethan. He looked at the sawdust on Ethan's shirt. Mr. Carter, Miller said. His voice was neutral. You're hard to find. I was working, Ethan said. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of tax evasion, wire fraud, and filing false documents. I know. Ethan held out his hands. Miller paused. He seemed surprised by the lack of resistance. Usually, men like Ethan Carter shouted, threatened to sue, or cried. Ethan just stood there, looking tired and strangely calm. Miller nodded to his partner. The partner stepped forward and cuffed Ethan's wrists. The metal was cold. The click was loud. Wait, Ethan said. Miller stopped. You have the right to remain silent. I know my rights, Ethan said. Just, can I lock the door? Miller looked at the glossy black door. He looked at the coming soon sign. It's a bookstore, Ethan said softly. My wife's bookstore. I don't want anyone to steal the tools. Miller hesitated, then nodded. Do it. Ethan turned awkwardly, his hands bound behind his back. He couldn't reach the lock. Miller sighed. He reached past Ethan, took the key from Ethan's back pocket, and locked the door. He put the key back in Ethan's pocket. Let's go, Miller said. They walked down the steps. A few tourists had stopped to watch. A woman pointed. A phone camera flashed. Ethan kept his head up. He didn't hide his face. He looked at the house one last time. I finished the shelves. Sarah, he thought. They are aligned. He got into the back of the SUV. The door slammed shut. The tinted windows turned the sunny Savannah morning into a gray, muted film. The next 3 months were a blur of fluorescent lights, gray walls, and legal jargon. Ethan was extradited back to New York. He spent 2 weeks in a holding cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center because his assets were frozen and he couldn't post the $10 million bail. Those 2 weeks broke him. He wasn't the architect in there. He was inmate number 8940. He slept on a thin mattress. He ate slop. He listened to men scream in the night. He had no mirror. He couldn't see himself. He could only feel the stubble growing on his face, the weight dropping from his frame. Then came the plea deal. His lawyer, a court-appointed public defender named Martinez, because his high-priced corporate lawyers had dumped him the second the checks bounced, sat across from him in a small windowless room. It's a weird one, Carter, Martinez said, shuffling papers. I've never seen a case like this. How bad is it? Ethan asked. His voice was raspy. 10 years? 20? The prosecution was gunning for 15. They had the manuscript, they had the bank records. You were cooked. Were? Yeah. Then your wife intervened. Ethan's head snapped up. Sarah? She's here? No, she's represented by counsel. But she submitted a sworn affidavit. And she wrote a check. A check? She liquidated a trust fund, some Timberland money. She paid back the back taxes, principal and interest, $4 million. Ethan sat back in the metal chair. The air left his lungs. She paid it? She paid the government, but she also implicated herself. She claimed that while you were the beneficiary of the fraud, she was the architect of the financial structure. She claimed you were, how did she phrase it? Willfully ignorant, rather than criminally masterminding. Martinez chuckled. She called you an idiot, basically, legally speaking. Ethan stared at the table, willfully ignorant. She was right. He had signed whatever she put in front of him. He hadn't wanted to know. So, Martinez continued, because the restitution has been paid, and because she took partial responsibility, the DA is offering a deal. They don't want a long trial. They want a win. What's the deal? You plead guilty to 1 count of felony tax evasion. You surrender your architectural license for 5 years. You serve 6 months of house arrest. And, this is the kicker, you have to complete 2,000 hours of community service. House arrest? Ethan asked. I don't have a house. The penthouse was seized. The court has approved a location, your wife's property in Georgia. She offered it. Ethan closed his eyes. She was saving him. Again, even after he had ignored her, belittled her, and cheated on her, she was saving him from prison. But it wasn't a get-out-of-jail-free card. It was a leash. She was bringing him back to Savannah, back to the scene of his humiliation. And Sarah? Ethan asked. What happens to her? She got probation. Since she turned state's evidence and paid the restitution, she walked with a slap on the wrist. She's clean. Ethan nodded. It was fair. I'll take it, Ethan said. Ethan returned to Savannah in late November. The heat had broken, replaced by a crisp, cool autumn breeze. He wasn't in handcuffs this time. He was wearing an ankle monitor, a chunky black plastic device strapped to his left leg. It blinked green every 30 seconds. He took an Uber to Jones Street. He had the key in his pocket, the same key Arthur had given him. He unlocked the door to the paper garden. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. Books were on the shelves, his shelves, thousands of them, organized by genre, by color, by feeling. There were sections labeled for when you're sad and for when you need courage. There were armchairs, rugs, lamps casting warm, yellow pools of light. It was finished. Ethan walked through the shop. He felt like an intruder in a sanctuary. He found a note on the counter. Ethan, the carriage house in the back is set up for you. That is your house for the arrest. You are not allowed in the main store during business hours, 9 a.m., 6 p.m. The ankle monitor perimeter includes the garden and the carriage house. Arthur manages the shop. You answer to him. There is a list of repairs on the fridge in the carriage house. Do not look for me. S. Ethan walked out the back door, through the garden, to the carriage house. It was a small, one-room apartment above a garage. It had a bed, a kitchenette, and a bathroom. It was simple, Spartan. He sat on the bed. He pulled up his pant leg and looked at the monitor. Blink, blink. He was a prisoner in paradise. The first month was hell. Ethan Carter, the man who used to dine at Le Bernardin, was now eating canned soup and sandwiches. He had no money. His bank accounts were gone. He received a small stipend from the court-mandated living allowance, funded, he suspected, by Sarah, just enough for groceries. He couldn't leave the property. During the day, he heard the chime of the front door opening. He heard voices, laughter, customers. He hid in the carriage house. He didn't want anyone to see him. He was ashamed. At night, after 6:00 p.m., when the shop closed, he was allowed into the main house to clean. That was his routine. He was the janitor. He swept the floors. He emptied the trash. He dusted the shelves he had built. One night, in December, he was mopping the floor near the biography section. He saw a book displayed on a stand. It was a local author spotlight. The title, The Shadow Builder. The cover was simple, a charcoal sketch of a pair of ice skates. Ethan dropped the mop. She had published it. He picked up the book. It was a paperback, self-published or small press. He opened it. Dedication to the man who could have been. He sat down on the floor, right there in the puddle of soapy water. He began to read. He had read the first few chapters on the USB drive, the angry parts, the evidence, but he hadn't read the end. He skipped to the last chapter. Chapter 12. The Resurrection. I don't hate him. Hate is too simple. I mourn him. And I mourn the boy who wanted to build schools. I mourn the man who cried when his mother died, before he learned that tears were a liability. I destroyed his life not to bury him, but to excavate him, to strip away the marble and the gold leaf, and see if the stone underneath is still strong. I am waiting, not for the architect, but for the builder. the one who knows that the most important structure is the one you build inside yourself. Ethan closed the book. He held it to his chest. She hadn't written it to ruin him. She had written it to explain why she had to break him. He looked at the charcoal sketch on the cover, his sketch. She had used his drawing. He realized then that she hadn't thrown it away. She had kept it. She had valued it enough to make it the face of her truth. Ethan stood up. He finished mopping the floor. He mopped it twice. He made it shine. The next morning, Ethan didn't hide in the carriage house. He woke up at 7:00 a.m. He put on his work boots. He went to the list on the fridge. 1. Fix the loose step on the porch. 2. Repaint the garden gate. 3. Organize the storage shed. He went to the shed. He found Arthur there, tuning a violin. "Morning," Ethan said. Arthur looked up. He didn't smile, but he didn't scowl. "Morning, inmate. I need paint," Ethan said. "For the gate. Top shelf. Don't spill it." Ethan worked all day. He sanded the gate, he primed it, he painted it black, he worked with the gate open. People walked by on the lane. They looked at him. Some recognized him. The disgraced architect from the news. "Hey!" a teenager shouted. "Nice ankle bracelet!" Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't yell back. He just dipped his brush in the paint. "Thanks," Ethan said calmly. "It matches the gate." The teenager laughed and walked on. Ethan paused. He had made a joke. A self-deprecating joke. The old Ethan would have sued the kid for harassment. The new Ethan just painted the gate. Christmas came. Savannah was decorated with wreaths and ribbons. Ethan was alone. Arthur had closed the shop for the week. He had gone to visit family. Ethan sat in the carriage house. He had a small artificial tree he had found in the dumpster. He had wrapped it in tin foil for decoration. It was pathetic. And it was perfect. He heard a knock on the door. He froze. He wasn't allowed visitors without probation officer approval. He opened the door. A delivery man stood there. "Package for Ethan Carter." Ethan signed for it. It was a flat square box. He took it inside. He opened it. It was a record player. A vintage turntable, restored, and a vinyl record. Bach, Cello Suites, performed by Yo-Yo Ma. There was no card, no note. But Ethan knew. He set up the player. He put the needle on the record. The music filled the small, cold room. The deep, resonant sound of the cello. It was the same music Sarah had been learning to play. He sat on the floor listening. She was watching. She knew he was alone. She knew he was trying. He grabbed a piece of paper. He wanted to write her a letter. He picked up a pen. He wrote, "Dear Sarah." He stopped. What could he say? "I'm sorry? Too small. I love you? Too late. Thank you? Not enough." He crumpled the paper. He needed to show her, not tell her. He looked at the empty wall of the carriage house. It was white, blank. He went to the shed. He got the charcoal. He began to draw. He didn't draw a building. He didn't draw shoes. He drew a face. Her face. Not the perfect, airbrushed Sarah of the gala photos. He drew the Sarah he had seen at the cemetery. Fierce, tired, real. He drew the lines around her eyes. He drew the determination in her jaw. He spent all night drawing. He covered the entire wall. It was a mural of regret and adoration. January, February, March. Ethan's hair grew long. He tied it back. He grew a beard. He looked like a mountain man living in a garden. He finished his community service hours by doing architectural sketches for local nonprofits from his room. He designed a homeless shelter pro bono. He designed a community garden. He didn't sign them Ethan Carter, Architect of the Year. He signed them EC. One Tuesday in April, the ankle monitor buzzed. A long, continuous vibration. Ethan called his probation officer. "You're done, Carter," the officer said. "House arrest is lifted. You're on standard probation now. You can leave the property." Ethan hung up. He looked at the door. He could walk out. He could go to a bar. He could go to the movies. He could leave Savannah. He opened the door. He walked down the stairs. He walked into the garden. The azaleas were in bloom. It was an explosion of pink and white. He walked to the back door of the main house. He entered the shop. It was 10 a.m. Customers were browsing. Arthur was at the counter. He looked up. He saw Ethan's bare ankle. "You're free," Arthur said. "I guess so," Ethan said. "What are you going to do? Go back to New York?" Ethan looked around the shop. He looked at the shelves he had built. They had settled. They looked like they had always been there. "No," Ethan said. "I have nowhere to go in New York. And I have a job here." "You do?" "The roof leaks," Ethan said. And the third floor flooring needs to be refinished. And I have an idea for a reading nook under the stairs. Arthur smiled. A genuine smile. The pay is terrible, Arthur said. I don't care about the money. Okay. Grab a ladder. Ethan stayed. He became a fixture at the paper garden, the quiet builder. Customers knew him as the guy who fixed things, the guy who recommended books on design, the guy who made the best coffee. He had finally learned how to use the machine. He lived simply. He read books. He listened to the cello. He didn't try to find Sarah. He respected her boundary. Do not look for me. But he wrote to her. Every week, he wrote a letter. He didn't mail them. He put them in a wooden box he had made, hidden under the floorboards of the carriage house. Letter number 12. I fixed the roof today. I found a bird's nest in the gutter. I didn't move it. I built a small cover over it so the rain wouldn't wash it away. The old me would have thrown it out. I think I'm changing. Letter number 24. I read a book about trees today. Did you know that trees talk to each other through their roots? They share nutrients. If one tree is sick, the others send it sugar. I was a sick tree, Sarah, and you cut me down so I wouldn't poison the forest. Thank you. One evening in May, a year after he had arrived in Savannah, Ethan was closing the shop. He locked the front door. He turned off the lights. He turned to go to the back. The bell above the door chimed. Ethan turned around. Sorry, we're He stopped. Standing in the shadows of the vestibule was a woman. She was wearing a terracotta dress. Her hair was loose. She was holding a cello case. Ethan's heart stopped. Sarah? She stepped into the light. She looked different. Older, yes, but peaceful. The tension that used to tighten her mouth was gone. She looked at him. She looked at his beard, his work clothes, his hands that were rough and calloused. She looked around the shop. She saw the shelves. She saw the new reading nook he had built. She saw the care he had poured into every corner. Hello, Ethan, she said. Her voice was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. You came back, Ethan whispered. He gripped the counter to keep from falling. I never really left, she said. I was just waiting. Waiting for what? She walked closer. She placed the cello case on the floor. Waiting to see if the graft would take, she said. When you graft a new branch onto an old tree, you have to wait to see if it grows or if it dies. She looked at his hands. Show me your hands, she said. Ethan held them out. They were stained with wood stain. They were scarred. They were shaking. Sarah reached out. She touched his palms. Her fingers were cool. Rough, she said softly. I'm sorry, Ethan said. I can wash them. No, she said. She interlaced her fingers with his. I like them. They feel real. Ethan looked into her eyes. He didn't see forgiveness there. Not yet. Forgiveness was a long road. But he saw recognition. She was seeing him, the new him. I read the letters, she said. Ethan froze. What letters? I never mailed them. Arthur told me where you hid them. I came by while you were sleeping. I read them all. Ethan blushed. That's invasion of privacy. Sarah smiled. A small, teasing smile. The kind she used to give him 20 years ago. I'm the landlady, she said. I have a key. She squeezed his hand. You built a roof for the bird, she said. Yeah. It was a robin. That was my favorite letter. She let go of his hand. She picked up her cello case. I'm playing a concert tonight, she said. In the square. Just a small thing. For the students. Can I come? Ethan asked. Sarah hesitated. She looked at him, measuring the distance between them. It wasn't a canyon anymore. It was a river, crossable, but deep. You can come, she said. But don't sit in the front row. I get nervous. I'll sit in the back, Ethan promised. I'll be invisible. No, Ethan, she said, turning to the door. Don't be invisible. Just be present. She opened the door. See you there? She walked out into the twilight. Ethan stood in the empty shop. He took a deep breath. The air smelled of old paper and hope. He turned off the last light. He walked out the door, not as the master architect, but as a man going to listen to his wife play the cello. The air in Chippewa Square was thick, not just with the humidity of a Savannah evening, but with expectation. The gas lamps flickered, casting long, dancing shadows against the hanging Spanish moss. A small crowd had gathered, mostly students from the art college, a few tourists, and some locals who knew that when Arthur Vance organized a concert, you showed up. Ethan stood at the very back, leaning against the rough bark of a massive live oak tree. He felt hidden, a shadow within a shadow. He wore his clean work shirt, and the boots that were now molded to his feet. He crossed his arms, trying to still the tremors in his hands. In the center of the square, a single wooden chair sat on a small makeshift platform. Then, she walked out. Sarah wore the terracotta dress. In the lamplight, it looked like the color of dried earth, of clay ready to be molded. She carried her cello. She sat down. She adjusted the end pin. She took a breath. She didn't look at the audience. She looked up at the sky, as if finding a specific star. Then, she played. It wasn't perfect. Ethan had listened to Yo-Yo Ma on vinyl for months. He knew what perfection sounded like. Sarah's bowing was sometimes a little heavy, her vibrato a little wide, but it was raw. It was visceral. She played Bach, the prelude, the same piece he had listened to alone in his carriage house. As the notes spiraled out into the night, Ethan closed his eyes. He saw the last 15 years of his life. He saw the glass towers he had built, cold, impressive, impenetrable, and he saw the silence he had filled them with. Sarah wasn't playing the notes. She was playing the silence. She was filling the empty spaces he had left in their marriage with a sound that was deep, mournful, and incredibly strong. She isn't the woman who irons my shirts, Ethan thought, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. She never was. That was just a role she played because I didn't write her any other lines. He opened his eyes. He watched her face. Her eyes were closed now, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked fierce. She looked like a stranger, a beautiful, terrifying stranger. The music swelled to a climax, a series of rapid arpeggios that demanded total focus. Sarah attacked the strings, her body swaying with the instrument. It was a dance. It was a fight. And then, the final chord, a low, resonant C that hung in the air, vibrating against the leaves, against the brick, against Ethan's chest. She lifted the bow. Silence returned to the square, but it was a different silence. It was a silence that had been changed. The applause started slowly, then grew. It wasn't the polite, golf clap applause of the architectural galas. It was whooping, cheering, genuine appreciation. Sarah stood up. She smiled. She looked flushed, alive. She scanned the crowd. Her eyes moved over the students, over Arthur who was beaming in the front row. Then her eyes lifted. They pierced the darkness at the back of the square. They found the oak tree. They found him. She didn't wave. She didn't smile wider. She just nodded. A small, almost imperceptible dip of her chin. I see you, the nod said. I see you seeing me. Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. He turned and walked away before they could fall. He couldn't go talk to her now. He couldn't intrude on her moment with his heavy baggage. He walked back to Jones Street, the sound of the cello still echoing in his bones. 2 days later, the real world came knocking. It arrived in the form of a black sedan parked in front of the paper garden. Not a rental car, a town car with New York plates. Ethan was in the garden, repairing a trellis that had bowed under the weight of the wisteria. He heard the chime of the front gate. He turned. Standing there was Marcus Thoroughly, the same Marcus from the gala, the billionaire developer. Marcus looked out of place in the garden. He was wearing a 3-piece suit that cost more than the entire bookstore. He was sweating profusely. Ethan, Marcus said, extending a hand, you're hard to find, or rather, easy to find, but hard to reach. Ethan wiped his dirty hands on his jeans. He didn't take the hand. Hello, Marcus. What are you doing in Savannah? I was in Atlanta for a closing. Thought I'd drive down, see the phenomenon. Marcus looked around the garden. He looked at the half-painted fence. He looked at Ethan's beard. You look rustic, Marcus said, a sneer curling his lip. The penitent monk look. It plays well with the press. It's not a look, Marcus. It's my life. Sure. Listen, Ethan, let's cut the crap. I'm not here for the scenery. I'm here because I have a problem. I'm retired, Marcus. Nobody retires at 43, especially not a genius. Marcus pulled a folded blueprint from his jacket pocket. He spread it out on the garden table, crushing a fallen azalea blossom. The Hudson Yards extension, Marcus said. We fired the lead architect last week. He's a hack. He doesn't understand the flow. The city is threatening to pull the permits. Ethan looked at the blueprint. He couldn't help it. His eyes traced the lines. He saw the flaw immediately. The atrium was too small. The wind shear would create a tunnel effect that would knock pedestrians over. You need to widen the base, Ethan said automatically, and rotate the axis 12 degrees to the north. Marcus grinned. Exactly. That's why I'm here. He pulled a contract from his pocket. Come back, Ethan. The probation is almost up, right? My lawyers can handle the license suspension. We'll hire you as a consultant for now. $5 million a year. Equity in the building. A penthouse in the new tower. Ethan stared at the contract. $5 million. It was the life he had loved. The respect, the power, the ability to walk into a room and have everyone stop talking. Why? Ethan asked. I'm a convicted felon. Americans love a comeback story, Marcus said. Think about the narrative. The fallen architect rises from the ashes. It's better than being squeaky clean. It gives you edge. Marcus took a gold pen from his pocket and laid it on the contract. The car is waiting, Ethan. We can be in New York for dinner. Ethan looked at the pen. It glittered in the sun. He looked up at the house, the paper garden. He saw Sarah in the window of the second floor. She was shelving books. She paused, looking down at them. She saw Marcus. She saw the contract. She didn't move. She didn't come running down to stop him. She didn't come down to encourage him. She just watched. She was letting him choose. Ethan looked back at Marcus. I can't, Ethan said. Can't or won't? Both. I have work to do here. Work? Marcus laughed, gesturing at the garden. Fixing a trellis? Ethan, you are building a cage for yourself. You're a lion living in a petting zoo. Maybe, Ethan said. But I like the zoo. He picked up the gold pen. For a second, the weight of it felt familiar, sedative. Then, he handed it back to Marcus. Rotate the axis, Marcus, or the building will sing when the wind blows, and not in a good way. Marcus stared at him. He shook his head, pockets the pen, and snatched up the blueprints. You're a fool, Carter. You'll die here, and nobody will remember your name. I know, Ethan said. Marcus stormed out. The heavy gate clicked shut. Ethan let out a breath. He looked up at the window. Sarah was gone. That evening, Ethan found an envelope under the door of the carriage house. It wasn't a love letter. It was a bank statement. It wasn't his. It was Sarah's. It was opened. It must have fallen out of her bag when she was in the garden earlier, or maybe she dropped it on purpose. Ethan picked it up. He read it. The Paper Garden LLC. Business loan account. Status, past due. Amount owed, $24,000. Final notice before foreclosure proceedings. Ethan stared at the red letters. He checked the date. It was current. He sat down on the bed. His mind raced. Arthur had told him she paid his restitution, $4 million. He assumed she had paid it from the fortress, the massive inheritance she had written about in her memoir. He assumed she still had millions left. He pulled out his laptop, an old, refurbished ThinkPad he had bought at a pawn shop. He logged onto the county property records. He searched for Sarah's assets. He found the deed to the timberland. Sold, November 2025. He found the transfer records. Proceeds, $4.2 million. He did the math. Restitution to IRS, $4.0 million. Legal fees, $150,000. Renovation of the bookstore, $100,000. She was broke. She hadn't just paid his debt. She had emptied her accounts. She had sold her grandmother's legacy, her escape hatch, to keep him out of prison. And now, the bookstore, her dream, the only thing she had left, was about to be foreclosed on because she couldn't pay the monthly loan installment. Sarah, Ethan whispered. The realization crushed him. She hadn't told him. She had let him live in the carriage house, eat her food, use her electricity, while she was drowning. She had rejected the transactional nature of their marriage, but she had performed the ultimate transaction. She had bought his freedom with her security. Why? Love? No. She said she was waiting to see if the graft would take. Guilt? Maybe. Duty? Sarah was big on duty. But it didn't matter why. What mattered was that the woman who had saved him was about to lose everything. And he had just turned down a $5 million job that could have saved her. He stood up. He paced the small room. He couldn't call Marcus back. He couldn't go back to that life. It would kill the new Ethan she was waiting for. But he couldn't let her lose the store. He needed money. Fast. He looked around the room. He owned nothing. A record player. Some clothes. A laptop. Wait. He owned one thing. He ran to the closet. He dug into the bottom of his duffel bag. He pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside was the Patek Philippe watch. He hadn't worn it in a year, and he had forgotten about it. The IRS hadn't seized it because he had been wearing it when he was arrested, and in the chaos of the processing, it had been logged as personal property and returned to him in a baggie when he was released. It was a 1953 Patek Philippe. Refern 2526. Enamel dial. Rose gold. He knew what it was worth. He grabbed his keys. The keys to the beat-up Ford truck Arthur let him use. It was 4:55 p.m. The high-end pawnshop in downtown Savannah closed at 5:30 p.m. He ran. The pawnshop wasn't like the ones in the movies. It was clean, well-lit, and smelled of antiseptic. Ethan slammed the watch on the counter. "I need to sell this," he said. "Cash. Today." The broker, a bald man with a loop, picked it up. He whistled. "Reference 2526, the man said. "Porcelain dial, double P crown. This is the real deal." "It's real," Ethan said. "I have the papers in the box." He handed over the box. The man examined it for 10 minutes. To Ethan, it felt like 10 years. "It's a beautiful piece," the man said. "At auction, in New York, you could get 60, maybe 70,000. I don't have time for an auction. I need cash now." "I can't give you auction price," the man said. "I have to hold it. I have to find a buyer. The market is soft right now." "How much?" 25,000. Ethan gritted his teeth. It was robbery. It was less than half its value. But the loan notice said $24,000. "Done," Ethan said. The man counted out the money. Stacks of hundreds. Ethan shoved the cash into a brown paper envelope. He walked out. He felt lighter. He wasn't wearing the watch anymore. He wasn't wearing the symbol of his old time. He drove to the bank. The lobby was closed, but the drive-thru was open until 6:00 p.m. He pulled up to the tube. "Deposit," he told the teller through the intercom. "Into the account of the Paper Garden LLC. Do you have a deposit slip?" "No, just the account number." He read the number from the foreclosure notice. He put the envelope in the tube. Whoosh. "Sir," the teller's voice came back, crackly and surprised. "This is a lot of cash." "It's legal," Ethan said. "Just clear the past due balance and apply the rest to the principal. Okay? Receipt?" "No receipt." He drove away. He got back to Jones Street just as the sun was setting. He walked into the garden. Sarah was sitting on the bench under the magnolia tree. She was holding a glass of wine. She looked tired. She was staring at her phone, probably looking at the terrifying bank balance. She looked up as he approached. "You went out," she said. "I had an errand." She looked at his wrist. She saw the pale strip of skin where the watch used to be. The watch he had worn every day for 15 years. The watch he said he would be buried in. She froze. She looked at her phone. A notification must have popped up from the banking app. She stared at the screen. Then she looked at him. Her eyes filled with tears. "Ethan," she whispered. "What did you do?" "I fixed the leak," Ethan said simply. "That watch, that was your grandfather's." "No, it was just a watch. It told the time, but it was always running fast." He sat down next to her on the bench. He didn't touch her. "You sold the timberland," he said. "You sold your safety net." Sarah wiped a tear from her cheek. "I didn't need a net. I needed to know if you could fly." "I can't fly, Sarah. I'm a builder. I stay on the ground." "You stayed," she said. "Marcus was here. I saw him. I saw the contract. You could have gone back. You could have made millions. You could have bought 10 watches. I didn't want the watch. I wanted this." He gestured to the garden, to the house, to the silence between them that was finally, truly comfortable. Sarah turned to him. She placed her hand on his cheek. Her thumb traced the line of his beard. "You're different," she said. "You look like him." "Like who?" "Like the boy I met in the coffee shop. The one who wanted to build schools." "I'm not him anymore either," Ethan said. "I'm someone else. I'm the guy who sands the floors." "The guy who sands the floors is a good man," Sarah said. She leaned in. It was the moment. The kiss. The reconciliation. Ethan wanted it. He wanted it more than he had ever wanted a contract or an award. But he pulled back. Sarah looked confused. "Ethan?" Ethan stood up. He walked a few paces away, turning his back to her. "I can't," he said. "Why? You paid the debt. You stayed. You proved it." "That's the problem, Sarah," Ethan said, turning around. His eyes were intense. "I proved it to you. Everything I've done for the last year, building the shelves, painting the gate, selling the watch, it was all for you, to show you I've changed, to earn you back. And you have," she said. "No," Ethan shook his head. "If I do this, if I kiss you now, then it's just another transaction. I did the work, I get the prize. I bought the ticket, I get the ride. It's not a transaction, Ethan. It's forgiveness. Is it? Ethan asked. Or is it just you being the savior again? You saved me from prison. You saved me from myself. And now you're saving me from loneliness. He took a deep breath. I need to know who I am when I'm not trying to impress you. I need to know if I'm a good man, even if nobody is watching. Even if you aren't watching. Sarah stared at him. The confusion in her eyes faded, replaced by a dawning respect. And a deep, painful sadness. What are you saying? I'm saying I have to go. Go where? You turned down Marcus. I'm not going to New York. I'm going somewhere else. Somewhere I can build something small. For people who need it. Not for a legacy, not for an apology, just for the work. He pointed to the carriage house. I packed my bag while you were in the garden. Sarah stood up. Ethan, you don't have to do this. We're finally aligned. We are. Ethan smiled sadly. That's why I can leave. Because I'm not leaving in anger. I'm leaving in love. He walked over to her. He took her hands. He kissed her palms, the rough, calloused palms of a woman who had rebuilt her own life. You opened the cage, Sarah, he whispered. You can't be surprised if the bird flies away. Will you come back? She asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, Ethan said honestly. I hope so. But I can't promise. Because if I promise, I'm doing it for you. He let go of her hands. He walked to the gate. He picked up his duffel bag. He looked back at the house one last time. The paper garden, the place where he had died, and the place where he had been born. Goodbye, Sarah. Goodbye, builder, she whispered. Ethan opened the gate. He walked out onto Jones Street. He didn't have a car. He walked. He walked past the gas lamps. He walked past the squares. He walked toward the bus station. He had $400 in his pocket, the change from the pawn shop. He didn't know where he was going. Maybe New Orleans, maybe out west. But as he walked, he noticed something. His shoes were untied. He stopped under a street lamp. He put his bag down. He knelt. He took the laces in his hands. He made a loop. He wrapped the other lace around. He pulled it tight. A perfect double loop knot. He stood up. He picked up his bag. He smiled. He walked into the darkness, not as a master of the universe, but as a man who finally, truly, knew how to tie his own shoes. Epilogue. 6 months later. The bell above the door of the paper garden chimed. Sarah looked up from the counter. She was helping a customer find a book of poetry. The postman walked in. Mail call. He dropped a stack of letters on the counter. Bills, catalogs, magazines, and a postcard. Sarah picked it up. It was a picture of a small, wooden community center in the mountains of North Carolina. It was simple, elegant. The roofline mimicked the slope of the hills behind it. She turned it over. There was no return address, just a postmark, Asheville, NC, and a message, written in block letters. The foundation held. E. Sarah smiled. She pinned the postcard to the wall behind the register, right next to the charcoal drawing of the ice skates. She turned back to the customer. Now, she said, her voice bright and steady. Let me find you that poem. It's about a tree that learned to walk. The Greyhound bus smelled of diesel fumes, stale chips, and body odor. It was a smell Ethan Carter had never experienced in his life. He had traveled in private jets, in limousines with climate control, and in his vintage Mustang. He had never sat in seat 42B, next to a man who was snoring so loudly it vibrated the plastic armrest. Ethan looked out the window. The landscape of Georgia was fading into the rolling foothills of South Carolina. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. He checked his pocket. He had $380 left. He had bought a sandwich at the station for $12, a bottle of water for $3. He had no phone. He had left his old one, the one with Marcus's number, the one with the banking apps, in the dumpster behind the pawn shop. He had bought a burner phone, a cheap flip phone with minutes you had to buy on a card. It was silent. He touched the window glass. It was cold. You opened the cage, Sarah. You can't be surprised if the bird flies away. He whispered the words to his reflection. He wondered if he had made a mistake. He could be in New York right now. He could be eating steak at Peter Luger's with Marcus. He could be designing the Hudson Yards extension. But then he looked at his shoes. The double loop knot. It held. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, letting the rhythm of the road carry him into the unknown. Asheville, North Carolina, was different from Savannah. Savannah was humid, slow, and haunted by the past. Asheville was crisp, mountainous, and filled with a strange mix of hippies, artists, and rugged mountain men. Ethan stepped off the bus at 6:00 a.m. The air was biting cold. He shivered in his denim jacket. He hadn't packed for the mountains. He walked into the town. He found a hostel, the Wandering Bear. $30 a night, the girl at the desk said. She had blue hair and a nose ring. Shared bathroom. No drugs in the room. I'll take it for a week, Ethan said. He counted out the cash. $210. He had $170 left. He went to his room. It was a bunk bed in a room with 3 other men. One was reading a Bible, one was cleaning a guitar, one was sleeping face down. Ethan put his duffel bag in the locker. He sat on the bottom bunk. He needed a job. He walked to a construction site downtown. They were renovating an old brick brewery. He found the foreman, a large man with a red beard and a clipboard. I need work, Ethan said. The foreman looked him up and down. He saw the soft hands. Despite the months in Savannah, they were still softer than a laborer's. He saw the intelligent, intense eyes. You got experience? I know buildings, Ethan said. I know framing, I know structural loads. I didn't ask if you knew physics, Professor. I asked if you can haul drywall. I can haul drywall. $15 an hour, cash. You break it, you buy it, start now. Ethan started. For 8 hours, he carried sheets of drywall up 3 flights of stairs. The elevator was broken. By noon, his arms were shaking. By 2 p.m., his legs felt like lead. By 4 p.m., he was dizzy from hunger. He saw a framing crew working on a partition wall. They were using 2x4s. Ethan paused, wiping sweat from his eyes. He watched them. The corner joint was wrong. They were using a simple butt joint for a load-bearing corner. It would warp in 6 months. Hey, Ethan said, walking over. You need to sister that stud. Or use a California corner, otherwise the drywall is going to crack when the humidity changes. The framer, a guy with a neck tattoo, stopped hammering. He looked at Ethan. Who are you? The inspector? No, I'm carrying drywall. But I'm telling you, that corner is weak. The foreman walked over. What's the problem? The professor here is telling me how to frame, the guy said. The foreman looked at the joint. Then he looked at Ethan. Are you an architect? The foreman asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Ethan froze. No. Then shut up and carry the rock. One more word out of you, and you're gone. Ethan bit his lip. He looked at the joint. It pained him physically to leave it like that. It was an imperfection, a flaw, but he needed the $15. He picked up the drywall. Yes, sir. He walked away. He had learned his first lesson of exile. Knowledge without status is just noise. Meanwhile, in Savannah, the silence in the paper garden was deafening. Sarah stood in the center of the shop. It was 9:00 a.m. She had just flipped the sign to open. Usually Ethan would be in the garden, making noise, hammering, sawing, humming along to the radio, or he would be in the carriage house and she would feel his presence like a hum in the air. Now, the garden was empty. The carriage house was locked. Arthur walked in, carrying a tray of pastries. Morning, he said cheerfully. I brought croissants. Almond for you. Thanks, Arthur. He looked at her. She looked pale. She had dark circles under her eyes. Did you sleep? Not really. The wind was loud last night. The wind or the ghost? Arthur asked gently. Sarah sighed. She walked to the window. He's not a ghost, Arthur. He's just gone. He left his mark, Arthur said, tapping the new counter Ethan had built. This joinery is exquisite. The man has hands of gold. He has hands of a surgeon, Sarah corrected. He dissected us. He took us apart. And now he's gone to find, I don't know what. He's gone to find himself, Sarah. You know that. You pushed him to it. I didn't push him to leave. I pushed him to be real. I thought he would stay and be real here. The phone rang. Sarah picked it up. The paper garden. Mrs. Carter? It was a voice she didn't recognize. Smooth, corporate. This is Sarah. Hi, Sarah. This is David from Marcus Thorne's office in New York. Mr. Thorne asked me to call you regarding the property on Jones Street. Sarah's grip on the phone tightened. What about it? Mr. Thorne is very interested in the architectural significance of the block. He's looking to acquire the deed. He's prepared to offer 30% above market value. Cash. Sarah laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound. Marcus wants to buy my house? He wants to help you, Mrs. Carter. We know about the financial situation. We know about the foreclosure scare. Ethan told us. Sarah froze. Ethan told you? Well, it came up in their meeting. Mr. Thorne feels terrible that you're struggling. He wants to offer you a lifeline. And of course, if you sell, we would allow you to lease back the commercial space for the bookstore at a discount. Sarah looked out the window at the garden Ethan had restored. Ethan hadn't told Marcus to help her. Marcus was using the information to manipulate her. He wanted to own the building Ethan had fixed. He wanted to own the memory. Tell Mr. Thorne, Sarah said, her voice shaking with rage, that this building is not for sale, not for 30% over market, not for 300%, and tell him that if he calls me again, I will file a harassment suit. She slammed the phone down. She looked at Arthur. Marcus is circling, she said. He thinks I'm weak without Ethan. Arthur took a bite of his croissant. Are you? Sarah looked at the charcoal drawing of the skates on the wall. The nut, the tension. No, she said. I'm not weak. I'm just untethered. Ethan worked at the brewery site for 3 weeks. He saved every penny. He ate rice and beans. He moved out of the hostel and rented a small room in a basement in West Asheville for $400 a month. It was damp and smelled of mold, but it was private. He bought a sketchbook. He sketched at night, not skyscrapers. He sketched joints. He sketched details. He sketched the way the light hit the mountains. One day, at the job site, he was eating lunch on a pile of bricks. A man walked onto the site. He looked different from the other workers. He was older, maybe 60. He had a white beard, wild hair, and wore a flannel shirt that looked like it had been through a war. He walked with a limp, using a walking stick made of twisted hickory. He wasn't wearing a hard hat. The foreman ran over. Hey, you can't be here. Hard hat area. The old man ignored him. He walked straight to the wall Ethan had been staring at, the one with the bad framing. He tapped the wall with his stick. Thud, thud. Garbage, the old man said. His voice was deep, like gravel rolling down a hill. The foreman puffed up his chest. Excuse me, who are you? I'm Elias. I own this building. The foreman deflated. Oh, Mr. Thorne, Mr. Vance. Wait, you're the owner? I bought it this morning, Elias said. From the developer. I didn't like what he was doing to the brickwork. Elias turned to the crew. Pack up, he said. What? The foreman asked. You're fired. All of you. This is shoddy work. You're disrespecting the brick. Get out. You can't just fire us. We have a contract. I bought the contract too. Get out. The crew grumbled, cursed, and started packing their tools. Ethan stood up. He brushed the crumbs off his lap. He should go too. He was part of the crew. He started to walk away. Hey, Elias called out. Not you. Ethan stopped. Me? Yeah, the skinny one with the sad eyes. Elias walked over. He poked Ethan's chest with the hickory stick. I saw you looking at that corner joint earlier, Elias said. You looked like you wanted to vomit. Ethan blinked. Well, it's a butt joint on a load-bearing wall. It's incorrect. Exactly, Elias said. It's an abomination. Elias looked at Ethan's hands. You're not a laborer, Elias said. You hold yourself like a man who's used to people listening to him. What are you? An architect? Ethan hesitated. He had denied it before. But with this man, he felt he couldn't lie. I was, Ethan said. I lost my license. Drink? Elias asked. Taxes and arrogance. Elias laughed. A loud, booming laugh. Arrogance? The architect's disease. I know it well. Elias extended a hand. His palm was rough as sandpaper. I'm Elias. I build things that don't fall down. I need a second in command. Someone who knows the math but isn't afraid to get dirty. Pay is $20 an hour, but you have to listen to me talk about philosophy. Ethan looked at the hand. $20 an hour? And lunch. I make good stew. Ethan shook the hand. I'm Ethan. Just Ethan? Just Ethan. Working with Elias was different. It wasn't construction. It was religion. Elias didn't use power tools if he could avoid it. He used chisels, handsaws, and mallets. He believed that the wood had a spirit, and that power tools traumatized it. You have to ask the wood what it wants to be, Elias told him one day, as they were framing a window. Does it want to be a frame? Or does it want to be firewood? Ethan, the man who used to design steel canyons using algorithms, found it ridiculous at first. It's just cellulose and lignin, Elias, Ethan said. It doesn't have a soul. That's why your buildings were cold, Ethan, Elias retorted. You built coffins for the living. The remark stung, but it was true. They spent 2 months renovating the brewery. They turned it into a community art space. Ethan designed the lighting. He used simple industrial pipes and Edison bulbs. It was warm. It was inviting. When it was finished, Elias stood in the center of the room. Good, Elias said. It breathes. He handed Ethan an envelope. Bonus, Elias said. Ethan opened it. $500. Thanks, Elias. Don't spend it on booze. Spend it on a new pair of boots. Those things you're wearing are an insult to your feet. Ethan smiled. I'll buy boots. I have a new project, Elias said. Up in the mountains, a retreat center for people who are broken, veterans, kids from the system. It's a non-profit, no money in it, but the land is good. I'm in, Ethan said without hesitation. It's remote, Ethan. No cell service, no internet, just us, the trees, and the bears. Ethan thought about Sarah. He thought about the letters he couldn't send. He thought about Marcus calling her. If he went into the mountains, he would be completely cut off. Is there a post office? Ethan asked. In town, 10 miles away. We go once a week for supplies. That's enough, Ethan said. Back in Savannah, things were getting harder. The summer heat had returned, heavy and oppressive. Business slowed down. The tourists preferred the air-conditioned malls to the humid streets. Sarah sat in the back office. Looking at the ledger, she was in the red. Again, the loan payment she had made with Ethan's cash had bought her a few months, but the operating costs were eating her alive. The electricity bill for the massive townhouse was astronomical. The roof Ethan had fixed held up, but the HVAC system had died last week. Repair cost? $8,000. She didn't have $8,000. She had sold her jewelry. She had sold her designer clothes. Marcus kept calling. He sent fruit baskets. He sent flowers. Just thinking of you. The offer stands. One evening, Arthur came into the office. He closed the door. Sarah, he said softly. We need to talk. I know, Arthur. I can't pay you this week. I'm sorry. I'm waiting for a check from the distributor refund. It's not about the pay, Sarah. I'm retired. I don't need the money. He sat down opposite her. It's about you. You're fading. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're waiting. You're living your life on pause. Waiting for him to come back and save you again. Or waiting for him to fail so you can go save him. I'm not waiting for him to save me, Sarah snapped. I'm trying to save this. The paper garden. It's my dream. Is it? Arthur asked. Or is it a shrine? A museum to the marriage you wanted? Sarah stared at him. That's cruel, Arthur. The truth is often sharp. Sarah, if the store is drowning you, let it go. It's just a building. It's just books. You're the garden, not this place. I can't sell to Marcus. He'll turn it into a Sephora or a bank. So sell to someone else. Or close it. Move on. Go to Paris. Go write your next book. I can't leave, Sarah whispered. If I leave, how will he find me? Arthur sighed. He reached across the desk and took her hand. If he's the man you think he is becoming, he will find you, even if you're on the moon. But you can't stay here and bleed to death just to keep a lighthouse burning for a ship that might not return. Sarah pulled her hand away. He will return, she said. He tied his shoes, Arthur. You didn't see it, but I did. He tied his shoes. Arthur stood up. Okay, Sarah, we'll fight a little longer. But the AC guy is coming tomorrow. I'm paying him. Don't argue. The mountains of North Carolina were a different kind of silence. It wasn't the empty silence of the city. It was a full silence, filled with wind, leaves, and water. Ethan and Elias lived in a trailer on the land while they built the main lodge. It was hard work. They felled trees. They stripped logs. They mixed concrete by hand. Ethan grew stronger. His shoulders broadened. His hands became rough, stained with sap and earth. He stopped thinking about architecture as design. He started thinking of it as shelter. One night, sitting by the fire, Elias threw a log on the flames. You're quiet tonight, Ethan. Thinking. About the woman? Ethan nodded. Always. Why did you leave her? Because I was a project to her. She fixed me. I wanted to be whole before I loved her. Noble, Elias grunted. Also stupid. Why stupid? Because nobody is ever whole, Ethan. We're all just cracks, held together by mortar. You wait until you're perfect, you'll wait until you're dead. Love isn't about two perfect circles touching. It's about two jagged shapes fitting their broken pieces together. Ethan looked at the fire. Two jagged shapes. I need to send her something, Ethan said. To let her know I haven't fallen apart. Write a letter. Words are cheap. I used to sell million-dollar ideas with words. I need to send her proof. Proof of what? That the foundation held. The next day, they finished the frame of the main lodge. It was a timber frame structure, using mortise and tenon joints. No nails, just wood locking into wood. It was strong. It would stand for 100 years. Ethan took a picture of it with a disposable camera he had bought. He waited a week to get the film developed in town. He looked at the photo. The structure stood against the backdrop of the Blue Ridge Mountains. It looked ancient and new at the same time. He bought a postcard. He taped the photo to the back of it. He wrote the message. The foundation held. E. He dropped it in the mailbox. As the metal flap clanged shut, he felt a shift. He wasn't in exile anymore. He was on his way back. But not yet. The lodge wasn't finished. He had to finish the roof. He had to finish the interior. 6 more months, he told himself. Finish the job, then go home. 2 weeks later, Sarah received the postcard. We saw this in the epilogue. She pinned it to the wall. But what the epilogue didn't show was what happened 5 minutes later. The phone rang. The paper garden. Sarah? It's Marcus. Sarah sighed. She looked at the postcard. She felt a surge of strength. Marcus? I told you, not interested. Sarah, listen to me. I'm not calling to buy the building. I'm calling because, well, I thought you should know. Know what? I'm in Asheville. I have a development project here, a ski resort. Good for you, Marcus. I ran into someone on a supply run at the lumberyard. Sarah's heart stopped. Who? Ethan. Sarah, he looks terrible. He's working as a laborer for some crazy old hermit. He's living in a trailer. He looks like a homeless person. He's building something, Sarah said defensively. He's wasting his life. Sarah, I tried to talk to him. I offered him a job on the resort project, lead consultant. He laughed at me. He said he prefers real wood. He does. Sarah, the man is mentally unstable. He's throwing away his talent. You need to come get him. Talk some sense into him. If you come, I'll fly you both back on my jet. I'll pay off your loan. I'll save the bookstore. Just get him to sign the contract with me. I need his brain. Sarah went silent. Marcus was offering her everything. The bookstore saved, Ethan back in a suit, financial security. She looked at the postcard on the wall. The foundation held. Ethan didn't want to be saved, and he didn't want to be bought. Marcus, Sarah said, her voice steady. Yes? Ethan isn't lost. He's found. And if he's laughing at you, then he's saner than he's ever been. You're making a mistake, Sarah. I'm going to crush that little hermit's project. I'm buying the water rights to the mountain. I'll dry them out. Sarah's blood ran cold. What did you say? Business is war, Sarah. If Ethan won't join me, he's in my way. That land is prime for my ski slopes. I'm going to foreclose on his boss. I'm going to bulldoze that little shack he's building. You wouldn't. Watch me. Tell him I said hello. Click. Sarah stood there, the dial tone buzzing in her ear. She looked at the postcard. Ethan was in trouble. Real trouble. Not internal trouble. External, corporate, Marcus-sized trouble. He was building a sanctuary, and Marcus was coming with a bulldozer. She looked at Arthur, who was shelving books nearby. Arthur? She said. Yes? Pack your bags. Where are we going? Sarah ripped the postcard off the wall. Asheville, she said. We're going to war. The Blue Ridge Mountains were waking up. A mist, thick and white like spilt milk, clung to the valley floor. The only sound was the rhythmic shh of a handplane shaving a sliver of oak. Ethan stood at the workbench outside the trailer. He was shirtless, despite the morning chill. His breath plumed in the air. His beard was thick now, trimmed but wild, red gold in the dawn light. He looked less like a Manhattan CEO and more like a Viking who had traded his sword for a chisel. He checked the shaving. It was paper thin, perfect. You're shaving that wood so thin I can see through it, Elias said, emerging from the trailer with 2 tin mugs of coffee. It's for the mantelpiece, Ethan said, not looking up. It needs to be smooth. It's wood, Ethan. It's supposed to have texture. You're still trying to control nature. Ethan took the coffee. His hands were stained with walnut oil. I'm not controlling it, Ethan smiled. I'm negotiating with it. They stood in silence, looking at the structure rising from the clearing. The lodge was beautiful. It wasn't the imposing glass monoliths Ethan used to build. It was low, hugging the contour of the land. The roofline mimicked the slope of the mountain behind it. It looked like it had grown there, pushing up through the soil like a mushroom. We finished the roof today, Elias said. If the rain holds off. It will, Elias said confidently. The birds are flying high. Ethan drank his coffee. He felt a deep, abiding peace. The anxiety that had plagued him for 15 years, the need to be the best, the richest, the most admired, was gone. In its place was the simple satisfaction of a joint that fit tight and a roof that didn't leak. Then, the sound came. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't the wind. It was the low, grinding roar of diesel engines. Ethan froze. He looked down the dirt access road. "You expecting a delivery?" Ethan asked. Elias frowned. "No. We have everything we need." The roar grew louder. Birds scattered from the trees. Around the bend of the road, a black SUV appeared. Then another, and behind them, terrifyingly large, was a yellow bulldozer. It sat on a flatbed truck, its steel blade gleaming like a giant tooth. Ethan's stomach dropped. He set the coffee mug down on the bench. "Marcus," he whispered. The convoy stopped at the edge of the clearing. Doors opened. Men in hard hats and reflective vests got out. They carried surveying equipment, tripods, lasers, stakes with orange ribbons. Then, from the lead SUV, Marcus Thorne stepped out. He was wearing pristine hiking boots that looked like they had just come out of the box, designer jeans, and a quilted vest that probably cost more than Elias's entire trailer. He adjusted his sunglasses and looked around with a sneer of distaste. Ethan walked forward. He didn't run. He walked with a heavy, deliberate gait. Elias limped beside him, gripping his hickory stick. "You're trespassing," Elias boomed. His voice echoed off the trees. Marcus smiled. It was a shark's smile. "Good morning to you too, Gandalf," Marcus said. He turned to Ethan. "And look at you! Robinson Crusoe! I almost didn't recognize you under all that foliage." "What do you want, Marcus?" Ethan asked. His voice was calm, but his fists were clenched at his sides. "I tried to tell you on the phone," Marcus said, walking closer, inspecting a stack of lumber. "I'm developing the Ridge, the summit at Asheville, luxury ski-in, ski-out condos, very high-end. This is private property," Ethan said. "Elias owns this land." "Does he?" Marcus asked. He snapped his fingers. An assistant, a young man with a tablet, hurried forward. He handed Marcus a document. "You see," Marcus said, tapping the paper, "Elias here is a brilliant carpenter, I'm sure, but he's a terrible bookkeeper." Marcus held up the document. "This is a promissory note. From 1998. Elias took out a loan against the land to pay for his wife's medical bills. Is that right, Elias?" Elias went pale. I paid that off. Years ago." "You paid the principal," Marcus corrected. "But you missed the balloon payment on the interest in 2005. The bank sold the debt. It bounced around a few collection agencies. It was considered toxic debt. Nobody bothered to collect because the land was worthless." Marcus grinned. "Until I decided to build a ski lift next door. Now, the land is valuable. So, my holding company bought the debt yesterday. We accelerated the loan clause. You owe the full amount, plus 30 years of penalties and interest." "How much?" Ethan asked. $240,000, Marcus said. "Payable immediately. Or we foreclose." Elias stumbled back. Ethan caught him by the elbow. "You can't do this in a day," Ethan said. "There's a legal process. Eviction notices. Grace periods." "Usually, yes," Marcus agreed. "But this falls under the Distressed Asset Recovery Act of North Carolina. Since the property is technically abandoned, no permanent residence, just a trailer, we can seize it in 48 hours. Marcus looked at his watch. "You have until Friday at noon. If the money isn't wired to this account," he handed a card to Ethan. "My bulldozers will clear this shack to make room for the lift station." He looked at the lodge. "Shame," Marcus said. "It's decent framing. Maybe I'll keep the wood for the lobby fireplace." He turned and walked back to his SUV. "Welcome to the real world, Ethan," Marcus called over his shoulder. "Physics doesn't win, money wins." The convoy turned around and left, leaving a cloud of dust and the smell of exhaust hanging in the pristine mountain air. Ethan and Elias sat at the small table in the trailer. The mood was funereal. Elias had his head in his hands. "I forgot," he whispered. "She was so sick. The bills were everywhere. I thought I handled it." "It's not your fault," Ethan said. "He hunted for this. He dug through archives to find a weakness. I don't have that kind of money, Ethan. I have the land. I have my tools. That's it." Ethan paced the small floor. "We can fight it," Ethan said. I know zoning laws. I know property rights. We have 2 days, Elias said. Lawyers take months. Ethan looked at his laptop. He had no internet signal here. He had to go to town. I'm going to town, Ethan said. I'll find a lawyer. I'll call someone. Who? Ethan didn't answer. He grabbed his keys to the truck. Ethan drove the rattling pickup truck down the winding mountain road. His mind was racing. $240,000. He had nothing. Sarah had nothing. She was broke because of him. He could call his old contacts in New York. But who would answer? He was a felon, a pariah. And anyone who did have that kind of money was likely friends with Marcus Thorne. He reached the town of Black Mountain. He parked in front of the library to use the Wi-Fi. He opened his laptop. He started searching for North Carolina foreclosure defense lawyers. Suddenly, a knock on the window startled him. He looked up. A U-Haul moving truck was parked next to him. And climbing out of the driver's seat, looking fierce and exhausted, was Sarah. Ethan's mouth fell open. He opened the door and stepped out. Sarah? She walked around the front of the truck. She was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun. She looked like she had been driving for 10 hours, which she probably had. Arthur climbed out of the passenger side, stretching his back. My lumbar, he groaned. Never again. Ethan stood there, frozen. You're here, he whispered. Sarah stopped in front of him. She looked at his beard. She looked at his sawdust-covered chest. He had forgotten to put on a shirt under his jacket. She looked at his eyes. Marcus called me, she said. He told me he was going to bulldoze you. He is, Ethan said. Friday at noon. I brought reinforcements, Sarah said. She pointed to the back of the U-Haul. What's in there? Books, Arthur said. And camping gear. And a very angry lawyer. A lawyer? The back door of the U-Haul rolled up. Sitting on a pile of sleeping bags was a young woman with glasses and a laptop. She looked about 25. Hi, the woman said. I'm Jenny. I'm Sarah's cousin. I just passed the bar exam last week. Ethan looked at Sarah. You brought a rookie lawyer and a truck full of books to fight a billionaire? Sarah smiled. It was a dangerous smile. The smile of the woman who had burned down his life to save his soul. We're not going to outspend him, Ethan, Sarah said. We're going to outsmart him. Now get in. We have work to do. The drive back up the mountain was quiet. Ethan drove the pickup. Sarah followed in the U-Haul. When they arrived at the clearing, Elias came out with his shotgun, thinking the bulldozers were back. Put it down, Elias, Ethan yelled. It's friends. Elias lowered the gun. He looked at the convoy. You know a lot of people for a hermit. Ethan introduced everyone. Sarah shook Elias's hand. You have a firm grip, Elias said approvingly. Like a carpenter. I'm a rebuilder, Sarah said. She looked at the lodge. Her eyes widened. Ethan built this? She asked. Designed and built, Elias said. Every joint, every beam. Sarah walked up to the structure. She ran her hand along the smooth, hand-planed post. She looked at the joinery. It was complex, beautiful, and utterly devoid of ego. It wasn't showing off. It was holding up. She turned to Ethan. Her eyes were shining. The foundation held, she whispered. Ethan looked at the ground. Yeah. Okay, Sarah said, clapping her hands. Sentimental moment over. We have 40 hours. Jenny, set up on the picnic table. Arthur, make coffee. Strong. Ethan, tell us everything Marcus said. Word for word. They turned the clearing into a war room. Jenny, the rookie lawyer, was typing furiously on her laptop, tethered to Ethan's burner phone for a slow data connection. The statute Marcus cited is real, Jenny said, adjusting her glasses. Distressed asset recovery. It allows expedited seizure if the property is blighted or abandoned. He's claiming the trailer isn't a permanent residence. It's not, Elias admitted. It's on wheels. And the lodge? It's unfinished. Technically, it's a construction site, not a dwelling. So he has a loophole, Sarah said. He claims it's just land with trash on it. Exactly, Jenny said. If we can prove it's a residence or a community asset, we can file for an injunction to stop the immediate seizure. That buys us 30 days to raise the money. Community asset, Ethan muttered. He looked at the lodge. It's a retreat center, Ethan said. For veterans, for kids. Do you have clients? Jenny asked. No, it's not finished. Do you have a 501c Civ3 status? Paperwork is pending, Elias said. Pending doesn't stop a bulldozer, Jenny sighed. Sarah stood up. She paced around the fire pit. She was thinking. It was the same look she had when she was editing his speeches, finding the weak point in the narrative. Marcus is treating this as a financial transaction, Sarah said. He thinks it's just numbers. We need to change the narrative. We need to make this about history. She turned to Elias. How long has your family owned this land? Since 1880, Elias said. My great-grandfather bought it with gold he panned in California. Is there a graveyard? Sarah asked. Up on the ridge, just a few stones. Is there anything rare? An endangered owl? A specific type of moss? Elias laughed. Just squirrels and bears. Ethan spoke up. There's the water. Everyone looked at him. The spring, Ethan said. Up the mountain. It feeds the creek that runs through the property. Marcus needs that water for his snowmaking machines. That's why he wants this specific parcel. He doesn't just want the land, he wants the water rights. Okay, Jenny said. But he probably bought those too. He bought the rights to the creek, Ethan said, his mind racing, accessing the geological maps he had memorized when designing the foundation. But he didn't buy the aquifer. He grabbed a stick and started drawing in the dirt. The spring here is an artesian well. It comes from deep pressure. If he bulldozes the ridge to build the lift station, he'll crack the cap rock. The pressure will drop. The spring will dry up. And he looked at Elias. Didn't you say the town of Black Mountain gets its emergency backup water from the lower reservoir? Yeah, Elias said. That reservoir is fed by this aquifer, Ethan said. Sarah smiled. It was the checkmate smile. So, Sarah said, if Marcus builds his resort, he steals the town's water supply. Environmental impact study, Jenny said, typing fast. If we can prove imminent threat to a public water source, we can get an emergency EPA injunction. Federal overrides state. Federal overrides foreclosure. But we need proof, Arthur said. We need a hydrologist. I am an architect, Ethan said. I studied hydrology in grad school. I can write the report. But I need to map the flow rates. I need to get up to the source. He looked at the mountain peak. It was getting dark. It's a 3-hour hike, Ethan said. In the dark. I'll go with you, Sarah said. No, Ethan said. It's dangerous. Steep. I drove 10 hours in a U-Haul, Ethan. I'm going. Ethan and Sarah hiked up the ridge by the light of the moon. The forest was silent. Ethan led the way, checking the trail for loose rocks. Sarah followed, surprisingly agile. You're in shape, Ethan said, offering her a hand over a fallen log. I lift boxes of books all day, Sarah said. She took his hand. Her grip was warm. She didn't let go immediately after climbing over. They reached the spring source. It was a small pool, bubbling up from a cleft in the granite. The water was crystal clear, reflecting the stars. Ethan knelt. He pulled out a testing kit. Elias used it to check water purity. He measured the flow rate. He took samples. It's pumping 50 gallons a minute, Ethan said. It's huge. If Marcus blasts this ridge, he'll destabilize the whole mountain. He sat back on his heels, writing notes in his field book. Sarah sat on a rock nearby, watching him. You look happy, she said softly. Ethan stopped writing. He looked at her. I am, he said. I'm tired. I'm broke. I'm about to fight a billionaire. But I'm happy. Why? Because this, he gestured to the spring, is real. It's not a projection. It's not a facade. If I fail, I fail. But if I succeed, it matters. You won't fail, Sarah said. How do you know? Because you have me. Ethan looked at her. In the moonlight, she looked ethereal, yet grounded. The resentment he had felt when he left, the feeling of being her project, was gone. He realized she wasn't here to fix him. She was here to fight beside him. Why did you come, Sarah? Really? Because of the postcard, she said. The foundation held? Yes. But also, because I realized something. I was angry that you left. I felt abandoned. But then, I looked at the store. I looked at the shelves you built. I looked at the gate you painted. And I realized that you didn't leave me. You left the version of you that was hurting me. She leaned forward. I don't want the architect, Ethan. I don't want the CEO. I want the man who knows how to map a spring in the dark. Ethan reached out. He touched her cheek. His hand was rough, calloused, dirty. I'm a laborer, Sarah. I make $20 an hour. I'm a bookseller. I'm in debt. We're a mess. Ethan laughed softly. We're a jagged fit, Sarah said. Elias would approve. They didn't kiss. Not yet. The moment was too fragile, too important. Instead, they sat there, shoulder to shoulder, watching the water flow, 2 survivors finding their current. Friday, 11 o'clock a.m. The clearing was tense. Jenny had filed the emergency injunction request at the courthouse in Asheville at 9 o'clock a.m. She was texting updates. Jenny, clerk took the filing. Judge is reviewing. It's tight. At 11:30 a.m., the roar returned. Marcus was early. The bulldozers rolled in. At this time, there were 3 of them, and a sheriff's deputy car. Marcus got out. He looked impatient. It's not noon, Ethan said, standing at the edge of the clearing. Sarah stood next to him. Elias and Arthur stood behind them. I'm on a schedule, Marcus said. Sheriff, serve the eviction. The deputy, a heavyset man who looked like he'd rather be fishing, stepped forward. Mr. Vance, the deputy said to Elias, I have a court order for possession of the property. You have to vacate. We filed an injunction, Sarah shouted. Federal EPA violation. I haven't seen any injunction, ma'am, the deputy said. I just have this order. Marcus smirked. You can file whatever you want. Until a judge signs it, it's just paper. Sheriff, remove them. If they resist, arrest them. You heard him, the deputy said. Clear out. The bulldozer engines revved up. The drivers lowered the blades. No, Ethan said. He walked forward. He stood directly in the path of the lead bulldozer. Ethan! Sarah screamed. Move aside, son, the deputy warned. That's obstruction of justice. I'm standing on public safety, Ethan said. His voice was calm, projecting over the engine noise. If you dig here, you poison the town's water. I have the data. I don't care about your data, Marcus yelled. Push him out of the way. The driver of the bulldozer hesitated. He looked at Ethan. He looked at Marcus. Boss, he's just standing there. He'll move, Marcus said. Drive. The bulldozer lurched forward. The tracks churned the earth. The blade came within 5 feet of Ethan. Ethan didn't flinch. He looked the driver in the eye. 4 feet. 3 feet. Sarah ran forward. She stood next to Ethan. Arthur grabbed his chest. But he ran too. He stood next to Sarah. Elias limped forward. He stood next to Arthur. A human wall. The driver slammed on the brakes. The machine bucked and stopped inches from Ethan's chest. The heat from the engine blasted his face. Are you insane? The driver yelled. I could have crushed you. You didn't, Ethan said. Marcus was screaming now. Arrest them, sheriff. Get them out of there. The sheriff looked at Marcus. He looked at the 4 people standing arm in arm. He looked at the old man, Elias, whom he had known for 40 years. Mr. Thorne, the sheriff said slowly, I can evict a squatter. I can't run over a line of citizens. This is a civil matter now. It's a criminal matter. They are trespassing. Suddenly, a siren wailed from the road. A generic sedan with government plates sped into the clearing. A woman in a blazer jumped out, waving a paper. Stop, she yelled. Department of Environmental Quality. She ran up to the sheriff. Emergency stop work order, she gasped. Signed by Judge Harrison, based on the hydrology report filed this morning. This site is a protected watershed investigation zone. She slapped the paper onto the bulldozer's blade. Nobody moves dirt until we complete a full review. That takes 6 to 12 months. Marcus turned purple. He snatched the paper. This is ridiculous. Who filed this report? I did, Ethan said. Marcus looked at Ethan. He looked at the beard, the dirt, the boots. You're an architect, Marcus spat. Not a hydrologist. I'm a builder, Ethan said. And builders know what holds the ground together. Water, Marcus. It's stronger than concrete. Marcus crumpled the paper. He looked at the sheriff. We're leaving, Marcus hissed. But this isn't over. I'll bury you in legal fees. We have books, Sarah said calmly. We have a lot of books on law. And we have time. Marcus got back in his SUV. The convoy reversed. The bulldozers retreated. Silence returned to the mountain. Ethan felt his knees give way. He sat down hard on the dirt. Sarah sat down next to him. She wrapped her arms around him. You did it, she sobbed into his dirty shirt. You stopped the machine. Elias walked over. He looked at the retreating trucks. Well, Elias said, we have 6 months to find $240,000. Ethan looked up. He was exhausted, but his mind was already working. No, Ethan said. We don't need to find it. We need to earn it. How? Sarah asked. The bookstore is broke. You make $20 an hour. Ethan looked at the lodge. He looked at the structure. We finish it, Ethan said. We finish it in a month. We market it, not just as a retreat, as an experience. The architecture of healing. We sell corporate retreats to the very people Marcus hangs out with. Guilt is a powerful motivator. We charge them 10,000 a head to come here, chop wood, and feel like they're saving the world. Sarah looked at him. She started to laugh. You want to sell manual labor to billionaires? I sold it to myself, Ethan said, smiling. And look how much good it did me. Sarah kissed him. It was a mix of dirt, sweat, and absolute victory. Okay, architect, she said. Let's build a business. Montage. The next month was a blur of activity. Ethan and Elias finishing the roof, Sarah and Arthur painting the interior, Jenny handling the permits, Sarah using her old contacts in the publishing world to get a feature story in the New York Times Magazine, the CEO who vanished to build a sanctuary. The article went viral. The bookings poured in. CEOs, burnt-out tech founders, stressed lawyers. They all wanted to come to the mountain to find what Ethan had found. 6 months later, the lodge was finished. Smoke curled from the chimney. A group of wealthy executives was out in the yard, awkwardly chopping wood under Elias's supervision. Ethan stood on the porch watching them. He wore a clean flannel shirt and his work boots. Sarah walked out, holding 2 mugs of coffee. She looked radiant. The stress of the bookstore debt was gone. The advance bookings had paid off Elias's loan and covered the bookstore's arrears. Marcus called, Sarah said, handing him a mug. Oh? He wants to book a retreat for his executive team. Ethan laughed. Did you tell him we're full? I told him the price is double for anyone who has threatened to bulldoze the owner. Did he take it? He wired the deposit. Ethan shook his head. The world is strange. It is, Sarah said. She leaned against him. Are you going back? Ethan asked. To Savannah? Arthur is running the shop. I hired an assistant. I think I'll split my time. The mountains in the summer, the coast in the winter. And the builder? Ethan asked. I think I'll keep him, Sarah said. She reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small box. I went to the pawn shop, she said. Ethan froze. She opened the box. It wasn't the Patek Philippe. It was a simple, vintage field watch. Stainless steel, leather strap, rugged, reliable. I couldn't buy back the Patek, she said. It was gone, but this fits better. Ethan took the watch. He strapped it on. It felt light. It felt right. Thank you, he said. What time is it? Sarah asked. Ethan looked at the dial. It's time to get to work, he said. He took her hand. They walked down the steps, into the clearing, ready to build whatever came next.